Chapter 585. I'm telling you to get out of my sight. Xiao Qing gestured for her friends to help, so a few of them rushed forward and dragged Tan Xiao out. Tan Xiao was still being dragged on the ground. He was especially unwilling. Auntie, I know I'm wrong. Seeing that I'm so handsome, please save me this time. Then the door was closed. Tan Xiao, who was lying on the ground, was speechless. Xiao Qing really didn't want to talk to him. She thought that Tan Xiao would behave himself after being humiliated, but to her surprise, Tan Xiao didn't leave her house after that day. He sat at the door. Whenever someone opened the door, he would find a way to get in. When no one opened the door, he would sit at the door and knock from time to time. He made himself look very pitiful. The guards who had gone out to investigate had all returned. They brought back a lot of news, but none of it was good news. The same thing happened in many bases. The difference was that most of the bases mainly drank the water made by superpowered people. Only a few of them drank purified water. Only those bases that didn't have many water superpowered people would drink purified water. Therefore, in most of the bases, there were only a few ordinary people who turned into zombies, so people didn't raise their vigilance. There were only a few bases that were almost wiped out because of drinking purified water. However, it fully proved that Xiao Qing's guess was right. The problem did appear in the water source, and it wasn't as simple as a base. Could it be that the entire environment had been completely polluted? If that was the case, it would be the end of human beings. There had been cases in the capital, but the number was small, so it didn't attract much attention. After Xiao Qing's guess was confirmed, Master Qin had a headache. He hurriedly contacted all the higher-ups in the capital and went to a meeting. Master Qin was going to take Xiao Qing with him, but Xiao Qing refused. Her identity was too sensitive. If she really attended the meeting, it wouldn't be a good thing. Master Qin knew that Xiao Qing was worried, so he didn't say much and went to the meeting. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Tan Xiao squatting at the door. Tan Xiao had been squatting there for a long time. When he saw someone open the door, he wanted to hug his thigh, but when he found that it was Master Qin, he hurriedly turned around and fell on his face. Old Master Qin snorted coldly, stepped on his palm, and walked over. Tan Xiao, who was in so much pain that tears came out of his eyes. The meeting was about to begin, and Xiao Qing was also preparing to leave. She had already done her best by informing the capital city. She actually wanted to participate in the upcoming meeting, but considering the views of some people, she might as well walk around and find a boyfriend for her Mulin, or find herself a mutated plant to fill in the last vacancy. She was at level 7, and she could subdue another plant. For Xiao Qing, what she needed now was probably a support-type plant, preferably a healing-type plant. She didn't need it herself, but her friends did. She already had enough plants for attacking and so on. Now she only lacked a healing plant for her little friends to use. Hence, she wasn't in a hurry. She could take her friends and walk around while looking for one. Whether she could find it or not depended on fate. This wasn't something that could be forced. She was going to talk to old Master Qin about leaving after the meeting. Chapter 586. When Xiao Qing left with her friends, old Master Qin sent them all the way out of the city, looking at her back. Xiao Qing was a little embarrassed to leave. She had never been cared about so much, except for the few in her family. She couldn't help but feel warm. When they left, it was close to noon, so they didn't walk far before they stopped to prepare lunch. In order to show that he was useful, Tan Xiao first went to pick up some firewood, then came back to clean the ingredients and help with the fire. After lunch, he even washed the dishes. Xiao Qing suddenly felt that it was okay to take him with them. At least, they could save the money of hiring a nanny. He didn't eat much, but he did a lot of work. He was like an all-around nanny. When she was in a bad mood, she could use him as a punching bag. They walked leisurely, neither slow nor fast. Soon, they entered the southern area. After Doomsday, the temperature changed a lot. Originally, the southern area was a little bit humid, but the climate was good. However, after Doomsday, the southern area became hot. It was almost as hot as Africa. Many of the mutated animals and plants that could walk had moved to the north to live. There were fewer survivor bases in the southern area than in the northern area. Let's rest here today, okay? If we go any further, we might reach a place with more zombies. Xiaoqing looked into the distance and found that there should be a town in front of them. The town was quite prosperous before Doomsday because it happened to be close to a cement road, so the traffic was relatively smooth. So the number of zombies in the town should be quite high. Although Xiaoqing and the others were not afraid of zombies, they were afraid of trouble. If they could, it would be better to go around. They were now in the small forest next to the cement road. This time, Xiaoqing made boiled fish and braised pork. The others were sitting aside and drooling. Although Tan Xiao had not been with her for long, he had seen her cooking skills. Now, he was completely kneeling under Xiaoqing's apron. Just as the meal was ready, before they started eating, they heard a burst of noisy footsteps. A group of people was running towards them, followed by a lot of zombies. Xiaoqing had just scooped up the soup, and before she could decide whether to do anything, the young man at the front shouted, "Run! There are zombies behind us." He actually didn't think of using them to block the zombies. He was a pretty good person. Xiaoqing reluctantly put down her chopsticks and then released her little vine. Among the group of zombies, only one was at level 5. The rest were at level 3 or 4. They were easy to deal with. Xiaoqing cleaned them up in less than a minute. Those who were being chased were still in a daze. They had risked their lives to escape, and had even lost a few of their companions. In the end, Xiaoqing had waved her hand and solved their problems. This was the real gap between them. Xiaoqing actually had 3 reasons for saving people. First, she had already seen them, and it was easy for her to do so. If she did not save them, it would be too much. Second, this young man was willing to speak out and remind her. He seemed to be a good person. If it were someone else, they might have used them to block the zombies. The most important point was that the young man at the front was very good looking. Xiaoqing was currently looking for a boyfriend for Mulin, but she still did not want to let go of any good-looking guy. This was a world that really depended on looks. The young man was the first to come over, and then he thanked them. "Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I don't know how many of us would have survived." Chapter 587. Xiaoqing was very easygoing. "You're welcome. What's your name? How old are you? Do you have a girlfriend?" As soon as Mulin heard this, he knew that Xiaoqing was asking on his behalf, because it was absolutely impossible for Xiaoqing to hit on a stranger in front of the 2 men and her family. Mulin couldn't help but take another look at the young man. The young man seemed to be in his early 20s. He was very young and handsome. Most importantly, he had a gentle temperament. Thank you very much. If it weren't for you, we would have become zombies' lunch." The young man whispered, "My name is Mu Lianxuan. I'm 21 years old. I don't have a girlfriend." When he talked about girlfriends, he couldn't help but blush. Then he whispered, "I'm just an ordinary person. I don't have any superpowers. No girl likes me." He looked so pitiful that even Xiaoqing couldn't help but reach out and touch his head. He was a very cute boy. Xiaoqing looked at Mulin, indicating that she should chat with him if she was interested. It was quite difficult to meet someone she liked these days. Xiaoqing hoped that Mulin could find a partner to accompany her in the future. Although Mulin wasn't interested, he couldn't help but comfort him when he saw the young man's pitiful appearance. "You're good looking. There will always be girls who like you." Was that really comforting? Xiaoqing couldn't help but rub her head. Then she deliberately said, "It's fate that we met. Do you want to stay for a meal?" The others were tired after running for a long time. When they heard that there was food, they immediately gathered around and looked at Xiaoqing eagerly. Xiaoqing pointed to the front calmly and said, "There's a town in front. There must be something to eat. You can find it yourselves." Then she turned her head and pulled Mu Lianxuan. The difference in treatment was too obvious. The others didn't have a good relationship with Mu Lianxuan. Their faces turned ugly when they heard this, but they didn't say anything. After all, they had seen Xiaoqing's strength. They didn't dare to cause trouble, so they left Mu Lianxuan and left together. Mu Lianxuan was very embarrassed, and then he said, "I should also go. You saved me, so I should repay you. How can I have the nerve to eat your food?" As he spoke, he blushed a little. I can't repay you for saving my life now. If there's a chance, I will repay you. Xiaoqing intended for him to spend more time with Mulin, so naturally, she wouldn't let him leave just like that. Xiaoqing hurriedly pulled him back and said, "It's just a meal. It's not worth much, so why refuse? Since it's fate that brought us together, let's sit down and have a meal together. I still have some things to ask you. Unless you're afraid that we'll ask you to repay our kindness, and are in a hurry to leave." Xiaoqing was moving him with emotion and reasoning. She even used the legendary goading method. Mu Lianquan's face was red all the time. He hurriedly said, "I'm really not in a hurry to leave." "Then sit down and have a meal together," Xiaoqing said lightly. When Mu Lianquan heard this, he said helplessly, "All right then, I'm sorry to trouble you." During the meal, Mu Lin's seat was arranged by Xiaoqing to be next to Mu Lianquan. Mu Lin whispered to Xiaoqing, "I really don't mean that. And I don't want to find a boyfriend. I'm not forcing you to get married. I'm just letting you interact with him. If you don't like him, then forget it. Why do you have to look like a white-haired girl?" Xiaoqing rubbed her head and said, "It's just a meal together, not letting you sleep. Have a good chat. If you don't like him, then part on good terms. What's the big deal?" Only then did Mu Lin go back and sit down obediently. The reason why she was against dating was because of her dead boyfriend. However, people should look forward and not stay in the shadows of the past. In the past, Mu Lin kept a gigolo to relieve her boredom because she was lonely. Now that she had found Xiaoqing, she would not be lonely anymore. Naturally, she did not want to have a boyfriend anymore. However, Xiaoqing hoped that she could find someone she loved. They were relatives and good sisters, but she could not replace her lover's identity. Therefore, Xiaoqing wanted to untie Mu Lin's knot in her heart and find her a good man. If she liked someone, it did not matter if there were a few more. Again, it was not like she could not afford to raise them. With the current financial and material resources of Jiang City, she could raise a few men. Even a company or a regiment of men could be raised. She was not afraid of Mu Lin's love, but she was afraid that she was not willing to find one. During the meal, Mu Lianquan was a little reserved. He only touched the dish in front of him. Xiaoqing did not care and kept observing him secretly. Mu Lin was a soft-hearted person, at least compared to her. Seeing the young man like this, she could not help but pick up some food for him. "Don't be too restrained. Eat whatever you want. Those who don't know will think that you only like to eat plain rice." Mu Lianquan bit his lower lip and said thank you softly. Mu Lin liked this kind of boy the most. Probably because of her early experience, she was especially competitive in this aspect. She liked boys who were passive but not cowardly. She could pamper them. It was okay for her to raise them. It was even good for her to raise them. This way, she would feel very safe. Seeing Mu Lianquan's cute appearance, Mu Lin was actually a little moved. It would be good if she could find a boyfriend like Mu Lianquan. When she was free, she would tease him. When she was busy, he would definitely help her silently. He would be shy and blush. They could kiss each other during the day and have sex at night. How good was that? However, Mu Lin liked it when both parties were willing. If Mu Lianquan was not interested in her, she would definitely not force him to go back. A forcibly picked melon would not be sweet. With chopsticks in her mouth, Mu Lin looked at Mu Lianquan. Perhaps she could try it out and see what he was interested in. If he was not interested in this aspect, it was okay. She could just change to another one. Thinking about it, she was really envious of Xiaoqing's interactions with her men. There were men who pampered Xiaoqing, and were also pampered by Xiaoqing. It was enviable. Mu Lin was not prepared to express her thoughts directly. It would be okay if Mu Lianquan agreed. What if he did not? Xiaoqing would definitely snatch him away. Mu Lin, who had made up her mind, picked up some food for Mu Lianquan and said, "Eat more. I see that you are so thin. You look like you will be blown away by the wind. How can you be so thin?" Mu Lianquan smiled shyly. Then, he picked up some food with his chopsticks and put it in Mu Lin's bowl. He whispered, "I can't get fat no matter how much I eat. Especially after the apocalypse. I have been running around. So I lost some weight. But I have muscles." He even showed off his pitiful muscles. Mu Lin could not help but laugh. Xiaoqing looked at this happy scene and suddenly felt a little out of place. Chapter 588. That strange feeling came out of nowhere, but it made Xiaoqing feel uneasy. The key point was that she didn't know where this feeling came from. Xiaoqing looked at Mu Lianquan carefully and felt that her uneasiness was too strange. Mu Lianquan was very normal. He was just an ordinary person. Except for his handsome face, there was nothing special about him. Thinking of this, she suddenly had an inspiration. She looked at Mu Lianquan carefully from bottom to top. Xiaoqing had always believed in her premonitions. Her sixth sense was very accurate. It had saved her many times and had never made a mistake. Therefore, Xiaoqing felt that there must be something wrong with Mu Lianquan. Just when Mu Lin was considering whether to have a deeper conversation with Mu Lianquan to understand him better, Xiaoqing suddenly touched Mu Lianquan's cheek with her fingertips. Mu Lin was stunned for a moment, then calmly crossed Mu Lianquan off the list of people to understand him better. Men were like clothes, and Xiaoqing was like a brother. She wouldn't quarrel with a brother over a piece of clothing. Then, things developed beyond her imagination. After Xiaoqing touched Mu Lianquan's face, she suddenly pulled out a military knife and stabbed it into Mu Lianquan's chest. Mu Lianquan also jumped back quickly. He reacted quickly and jumped out of Xiaoqing's attack range. He didn't look like an ordinary person at all. Tan Xiao was stunned and murmured, "A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea." There was still a military knife in Mu Lianquan's chest, but there wasn't a trace of blood. He was still very calm. "How did you find out?" Xiaoqing said coldly. "Your disguise is too good. I didn't find anything wrong at first, but no matter how good your disguise is, it can't change the fact that you're not a living person. The difference between the skin of a living person and that of a zombie is huge. Color, temperature, flexibility, and other aspects. I've seen too many zombies, so I naturally found something wrong. Then I tested it. Sure enough, your skin is cold and stiff. You don't look like a living person at all. I can't help but admire your observation skills." Mu Lianquan sighed, gave her a thumbs up and said, "You're the woman with the sharpest senses I've ever seen. Thank you for the compliment." Xiaoqing pulled out another spare military knife and prepared for battle. Then she said, "Who sent you? What's your purpose? Tell me." Mu Lianquan smiled. His whole body suddenly flew towards Xiaoqing like an arrow piercing through the air. The surface of his body was covered with a layer of green mist. This green mist was a type of deadly poison, and also one of his trump cards. He didn't dare to say that he was always successful, but at the very least, the number of people who weren't afraid of his poison could be counted on one hand. Mu Lianquan smiled coldly. Just as he was about to pounce on Xiaoqing, he was entangled by a bunch of vines. He was not afraid, because all the vines would be melted by his venom. He was full of confidence, but the next second he was stunned. All the vines ignored his poisonous mist and tightly trapped him in the middle. Some of the vines even used his poison as nourishment and absorbed part of the poison. What a joke! Xiaoqing had fed her vines with poison. It could be said that her vines were a type of deadly poison. How could something with deadly poison be poisoned? Wasn't this a joke? So Mu Lianquan was dumbfounded. Originally, he could have escaped, but because he was too confident, he was tightly bound by the vines and hung in the air. Xiaoqing lazily stretched out her hand and touched his cold cheek. Then she said, "This is the feeling." Chapter 589. Mu Lin also went up to touch it. It was cold but not too stiff. It was like a snake's skin, which made one's hair stand on end. She exclaimed, "Ah Qing, you're really amazing. How could you tell?" She thought that Mu Lianquan was really a normal man from the outside. If she didn't try, she wouldn't find out that he was abnormal. Xiaoqing said, "Look at your skin, and then look at his skin. You'll find the difference." She was like this, so it was natural for her to find out that there was something wrong with Mu Lianquan. Mu Lianquan struggled for a while, and the thorns on the vines pierced deeper. Xiaoqing smiled and said, "Don't try to struggle. You can't escape." Mu Lianquan was hung in the air. He sighed helplessly and said, "This time I've lost. I'm convinced. You're even more powerful than the rumors say." "Thank you for the compliment." Xiaoqing was expressionless. She pinched his chin and said, "This time, can you tell me who sent you?" Mu Lianchuan blinked and said, "I wanted to come here. Would you believe me?" Xiaoqing didn't say anything, but the distrust in her eyes was obvious. Mu Lianchuan said helplessly, "In this day and age, the truth is the hardest to believe. No one really sent me here. I only heard some stories about you, so I specially came to take a look. Put me down. We are the same kind, so let's not kill each other." "Who's the same kind as you?" "Bah." Mu Lin spat and said without caring about his image, "Don't try to claim connections." Xiaoqing comforted Mu Lin, then added more vines and tied Mu Lianchuan up tightly. "Okay, I'll believe you this time. Now, you can tell me where you came from." Mu Lianchuan was hung there like a salted fish. He said honestly, "I really can't tell you this. Otherwise, you won't be able to see me again." He changed his shy image and said shamelessly, "Since we're the same kind, please let me go this time. At most, I'll let you sleep with me in any position." Yin Qiyue was furious. "Bah! In your dreams." Because of his dishonesty, Xiaoqing tightened her vines. She didn't expect him to spit it all out. The food he ate couldn't be digested at all. Because he wasn't human, he didn't have the ability to digest food. So when he was stimulated, he spat it all out. Fortunately, Yin Qiyue reacted quickly and jumped away. Otherwise, she would definitely vomit all over him. Mu Lianchuan coughed and cleared his throat before he said, "I'm not joking. I'm serious. I'll sleep with you for a while. Let me go. You can choose any position you like. Man on top and woman on bottom. Woman on top and man on bottom." Xiaoqing decisively stuffed his mouth with a vine. In order to prevent him from biting off the vine, Xiaoqing let the vine entangle his tongue. The sharp thorns instantly penetrated the skin, with a kind of anesthetic poison. This time, Mu Lianchuan was really speechless. He looked at Xiaoqing with a resentful face. His eyes were full of complaints, and it was as if he was saying, "You really don't know how to be romantic." Then, a vine pulled open his clothes and exposed his flat and pale chest. When they saw his face, they didn't feel anything strange. However, when his chest was exposed, they also noticed it. Mu Lianchuan's chest was especially white. It was the kind of paleness that looked like it had been soaked in formalin. At first glance, people would think that he was too white. But when they looked closely, they would realize that he was so white that he didn't look like a living person. His tongue was locked, but he still didn't behave. A sickly red color appeared on his cheeks as he said vaguely, "If you want to see my chest, just say it. You're so beautiful, I'll definitely take it off myself." Xiaoqing ignored him. The vine had already touched his chest. Below his chest, where his heart was, it was calm. There was no beating at all. After confirming his identity, Xiaoqing tied him up into a ball. Then, several people took turns to look at him. Although Tan Xiao was a little stupid, he wasn't stupid. He had just heard too much, and now his brain was a little blank. He seemed to know something that he shouldn't know. Would he be killed? He was honest. He lowered his head and swallowed all the doubts in his heart back into his stomach. Xiaoqing calmly tied Mu Lianchuan into a ball and threw him into the car with a pile of messy things. If it weren't for the many doubts that hadn't been solved, she would have directly killed Mu Lianchuan. After eating, they went on the road again. Mu Lin had been very curious. Is his situation the same as yours? Are there a lot of zombies like him? Logically speaking, there shouldn't be. I don't know what his situation is. We can only let Yin Qiyue study it carefully when we take a break. Xiaoqing said softly. I always feel that he hid the most important part. His origin is not simple. Mu Lin nodded and then took the opportunity to say, Qing, look, it's not easy to meet a good man. In the end, he's not a living person. Does this mean that I'm not destined to be with a man? You don't have to find one for me. Xiaoqing gently touched the back of her head and said, There are always good men. Don't be discouraged. Who hasn't met a few scumbags? Mu Lin was directly discouraged. She bit her handkerchief and sobbed. Why did Xiaoqing have to try so hard to find a partner for her? Not a few perverts. She really didn't want it. The group of people packed up, and then continued to move forward. After turning a corner and going around the town in front, they continued to walk. Until the sky gradually turned dark, They still didn't see any place to stay. Not to mention a survivor base. There wasn't even a place to shelter from the wind and rain. They could only directly set up camp, and then set up a few tents. Just when the tents were set up and they hadn't cooked, a group of mutant monkeys suddenly fell from the sky. These mutant monkeys looked like zombies. The rotten flesh on their faces fell down when they moved, which looked particularly disgusting. This group of mutant monkeys came very suddenly without warning. Even Xiaoqing didn't notice how they came. After dealing with this group of particularly disgusting mutant monkeys with great difficulty, Xiaoqing said, "Go and see if Mu Lianchuan is still in the carriage." Yan Qiwa opened the carriage and looked inside. Sure enough, there were only a few vines lying on the ground. Just as she thought, it was a diversion. Sure enough, there was a mastermind behind it. Chapter 590. There was really no one else who could encounter such a scheme while traveling. Xiaoqing patted her head and said, "No need to look for them anymore. They must have run away. Anyway, we are full. Let's go." The others did not object, and continued to walk forward with her. Xiaoqing originally thought that this matter was over. The person in the dark would be scheming, and would not make a move immediately. However, the fact was that not long after they left, they met another person. This time it was a woman. She was holding a small bag in her arms and looked pitiful. She came over and asked, "Can I borrow some water? I have been walking for a day and have not found a water source. I really have no strength." Xiaoqing did not say anything and directly stabbed her. The woman made a fake exclamation and then dodged. She said with a wrong face, "I just want to drink water. Do you have to treat me like this?" Xiaoqing looked at her coldly. After a long while, she had an expression that said, "Oh, I admit defeat." Then she said, "Little Chun Chun is right. You are really not a simple person." Sure enough, she knew Mu Lianchuan. This group of people should be in the same group. The power behind them was not simple. They all had the smell of zombies. It was very obvious. Where did this group of people come from? They looked very powerful. This woman was like Mu Lianchuan, and even somewhat similar to Xiaoqing. Then the question was who arranged them. The woman hugged her small bag and said, "Actually, I am just passing by. You can talk slowly." She wanted to run, but the vines that had been lingering under her feet for a long time quickly drilled out, and formed a huge vine whip, which was thrown at her face. The vine whip whistled through the air, looking very ferocious. It fell towards her head. The woman's expression changed. She quickly leaped into the air and dodged the whip. But then, another vine whip drilled out from the ground and caught her off guard. In a moment of carelessness, the bundle in the woman's hand was whipped away. Her expression changed drastically. She actually ignored the vine whip that was whipping her, and flew up to catch the bundle. The outer layer of the bag had been broken. After all, it was just the most ordinary cloth. It could not withstand Xiaoqing's attack, and then the thing inside was exposed. It was a skull. Looking at the size of the skull, it should belong to an adult. The woman hugged the skull very carefully. Large pieces of flesh on her face and body were taken away by the vine whip. She seemed to be completely unaware, and only cared about whether the skull in her arms was damaged or not. Probably because of luck, the skull was intact. The woman breathed a sigh of relief and hugged the skull tightly. She did not stay for another minute. Xiaoqing calmly watched her escape and said, "It is indeed different. Look at the wound on her face. The skin part is good, but the flesh under the skin still looks like rotten meat that has been left for a long time. Once the skin is not protected, it is all exposed." For example, she and Dummy were the same on the outside and inside. Although there was still little blood in their bodies were not active, and their hearts could not beat. At least under their skin, there was normal flesh. Unlike this woman, there was rotten flesh under her skin, just like the painted skin in the story of Strange Stories from a Chinese studio. Their human-like appearance is fake, but it can be seen that they have intelligence and memory. They are very similar to humans. I just don't know how strong they are. Mu Lin touched his chin and said, "At their level, it is easy for them to sneak into the survival base." Chapter 591. They're probably at level 6, definitely not at level 7. I'm not sure about the specifics. After all, we haven't had a life-and-death battle, Xiaoqing said calmly. She felt that something was wrong. The feeling that these two people gave her was very strange. It didn't feel like they had risen to level 6 on their own. Instead, it felt like they had gone through a special accelerated method to reach their current strength. Therefore, their strength was actually a little weaker than that of ordinary level 6 zombies. However, their intelligence made up for it. Then the question was, who had the ability to mass-produce level 6 zombies? If someone could really do it, it would undoubtedly be a nightmare for human beings. After all, it was very difficult for human beings to reach level 6. However, the zombies that could be mass-produced were still at level 6 even if their strength was a little weaker. If there was a limit to the production, and it couldn't be mass-produced, it would be fine. However, if it could be mass-produced, Xiaoqing could already see the future of human beings. I can feel a special kind of energy fluctuation from them. Yin Qiyu frowned and said, "This kind of energy fluctuation gives me a very familiar feeling, but I can't tell what it is. I'm just worried that they're really targeting us." They were quite arrogant in the post-apocalyptic world, but their enemies should be human beings. Most of them were already dead. Why would a nest of zombies suddenly jump out and make trouble for them? They didn't have anything that could make those zombies covet them. I can't think of anything. We'll just deal with whatever comes our way. Xiaoqing wasn't afraid of anything. Yin Qiyu nodded. Although they continued to move forward, everyone was vigilant. They didn't feel like they were just having fun like before. When it was almost dark, they arrived at a small forest. This place was very good and very suitable for resting. If they wanted food, they had food and shelter. Their strength was high enough, so they were not worried about encountering any danger in the forest, so they stopped to rest. They didn't encounter anything during the meal. At night, Xiaoqing didn't sleep as usual. Instead, Dai guarded the first half of the night, while she guarded the second half. She let Mu Lin and Yin Qiyu rest. Although Dai guarded the first half of the night, Xiaoqing didn't actually sleep. She laid in the tent and opened her 5 senses to listen to the surrounding sounds. She sensed if anyone was approaching. She had an indescribable feeling that tonight wouldn't be so quiet. When night came, she couldn't sleep. After lying in bed for half a day, she got out of the tent and sat with Dai. As soon as she sat down, she heard a faint rustling sound in the wind. It seemed like something was coming. She pricked up her ears and listened carefully. The sound was getting closer and closer. It should not be just one person, or more than one thing. Dai also noticed it. He opened his eyes wide and stared cautiously at the night in the distance. "Can you feel what it is?" Xiaoqing asked softly. "It might be the monkey we met today. Anyway, it's very small," Dai whispered. As soon as he finished speaking, he was stunned. Dai, or more accurately, he was now Fu Jingshan. He seemed to have exposed something just now. Fu Jingshan secretly looked at Xiaoqing's side profile. She didn't have any extra expression on her face. She was very calm, as if she didn't notice his abnormality just now. However, the more calm she was, the more Fu Jingshan couldn't calm down. He felt that Xiaoqing was abnormal. Xiaoqing was a very attentive person. How could she not notice that he spoke so fluently just now? Chapter 592. Xiaoqing listened carefully for a long time. The faint sound was getting closer and closer. It was almost in front of them. "Get ready to fight," Xiaoqing said in a low voice. Fu Jingshan nodded and got ready to fight. In fact, he was a little nervous because his fighting instincts were not as good as Dai's. After Doomsday, he had been in a deep sleep. His strength really belonged to Dai, so it was normal for him to be unfamiliar with it. If he was exposed during the fight, the loss would outweigh the gain. "Follow behind me," Xiaoqing said, and released Guang Guang to guard the tent. Then he released the big flower and vines. A minute later, a bunch of strange creatures appeared in front of them. There were monkeys that they had encountered during the day, and a large number of zombie rats. Zombie rats were probably the most dangerous existence to ordinary people after the apocalypse. Although they were not strong individually, they were small in size. Even if they sneaked into a survivor base, they would not be discovered. As long as they bit an ordinary person, they would turn that person into a zombie. After Doomsday, there were many bases where ordinary people were checked before entering. Normally, they would not be turned into zombies. However, they were turned into zombies. After investigation, it was found that it was done by zombie rats. If that was the case, they were not dangerous. After all, they were not a threat to paranormals. However, in addition to their small size, they had another characteristic, which was that they lived in groups. One zombie rat might not be able to defeat a paranormal. But what about a group of them? Ants could even kill an elephant. Moreover, the gap between them and paranormals was not the same as the gap between ants and elephants. No matter how powerful the paranormals were, they would not be able to withstand the attacks of a large group of zombie rats who were not afraid of death. Most of the paranormals would probably end up with their superpowers exhausted, and then they would be gnawed into bones. In addition to the monkeys and rats, there were also a small number of snakes and mosquitoes. Mosquitoes were more dangerous to ordinary people. After all, they were too small and liked to suck blood. The reason why they were not as lethal as zombie rats was that after Doomsday, very few mosquitoes became zombies. However, there were several zombified mosquitoes here. They all stayed on the trees and hid in the leaves. If one didn't look carefully, there was no way to find them. Rather than saying that they would participate in the battle, it was better to say that they were more like surveillance cameras. The snakes here are all very large pythons. They can be directly used to act in horror movies about snakes eating people. Moreover, each of them looks very ugly. The snake's skin is tattered and covered with a layer of greasy liquid. It's dirty and challenging people's patience. Xiaoqing took a deep breath. It was not because of anything else, but purely because she was disgusted. After the apocalypse, she had seen many disgusting things, but she had never seen anything so disgusting, especially that layer of oily liquid. She couldn't imagine that she would have to deal with it immediately. In addition to being disgusted, she became more vigilant. Created high-level zombies with human appearances, zombified animals. How many tricks did the enemy have that they had not shown? She seemed to be able to see someone hiding behind the scenes, sneering at her. Let's kill them first. Xiaoqing calmly woke up the two sleeping people, and then took the lead. Although she was disgusted by the ugly appearance of the zombie snakes, she had to deal with them first. Because these things were the most lethal, she couldn't leave them to Mulin and the others. Xiaoqing was very fast. She tied up several big snakes first. Mulin and Yin Qiyu just climbed out of the tent and were stunned. Especially Mulin. She was so shocked that she jumped and shouted, "Oh my God! I thought I was in an amusement park at the end of the world. Why are they all so ugly? Come and work." Xiaoqing waved her hand and said, "This assassination attempt came too suddenly. I keep having the feeling that their goal isn't that simple. Let's end this quickly, and deal with these things before slowly studying them. Mulin, you and Qiyu stand behind me. You don't have to go forward. Just do your best to capture those who are alone." The two nodded. Their superpowers, one was air manipulation, and the other was mental, so they were both considered long-range. If they were a mage in a game, they would be the most suitable profession to stand at the back. Their lethality was not small. Start working. Xiaoqing endured the uneasiness in her heart and decisively took action. Chapter 593. The four of them cooperated well. Although Mulin was a psychic paranormal, all of her abilities were focused on attacking, creating illusions, and so on. She had completely given up on defense. This probably had something to do with her personality. Although Mulin and Xiaoqing appeared soft and gentle when they were together, Xiaoqing was actually a very tough person. Therefore, all of her abilities were related to attacking. Therefore, Yin Qiyu created an air barrier to protect the two sides, and the back to prevent sneak attacks. The two of them were responsible for the monkeys. Xiaoqing was responsible for the snakes and rats, and Fu Jingxian was only responsible for protecting Xiaoqing. The most disgusting thing was the rats. They were too small, and they were simply everywhere. They were not easy to fight, and there were so many of them. After killing some more would come out. It was as if there was no end to them, and it was really tiring. Xiaoqing had a headache when dealing with these little guys. Her vines could only wrap around a few rats at a time, because the rats would run away when they saw the vines. It was impossible for them to stand in a straight line and let her hit them. She had an advantage when it came to fighting the bigger ones, but she had no advantage when dealing with the smaller ones. Mulan was the same. Her psychic paranormal could directly attack the human brain. When dealing with zombies, she would directly attack their nuclei. However, there were so many rats, and they were so small that she could not even count how many of them there were, let alone attack their nuclei. Fortunately, Yin Qiue's air barrier was there. Even if the rats crawled in front of them, they would be blocked by the air barrier. They could only lie on the barrier and squeak while gnawing on it. After fighting for a while, Xiaoqing felt that something was wrong. These zombies only looked scary, but they could not cause any harm to them. Was it the person behind the scenes who sent them to test their strength? Xiaoqing felt that something was wrong. First, if it was really a test, the previous two people should be enough to measure their strength. If it was not a test, it couldn't be that they were here to play a game with them, right? Who would be so bored? She always felt that the person behind the scenes was very interesting. Usually, when one was hiding in the dark and facing an enemy in the open, shouldn't one carry out a more confident sneak attack? This person actually came to test her openly time and time again. Usually, there were only two possibilities in this situation. First, that person was mentally retarded. Second, he was very confident in his own strength. Xiaoqing felt that the first possibility was more likely. After thinking about it, Xiaoqing suddenly thought of a terrifying possibility. The enemy was not retarded, and these zombie animals were not the main force. Their purpose was to stall her and her little friends. If that was the case, then it would be really troublesome because the other party's target was very likely her headquarters. Clean up this mess, Xiaoqing said coldly. We need to return immediately. If it was really as she thought, then the person who was secretly targeting her was really a very scheming person. Although the others hadn't figured out the reason, they immediately didn't hold back and attacked with all their strength, clearing a path. Air Dai, you go and get the car. Xiaoqing used vines to sweep away the rats that were trying to get close, then said. Fu Jingshan responded, then stiffened and looked at Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing's eyes were black and white, and there was no emotion in them. Fu Jingshan felt that his cold hands and feet were even colder. Chapter 594. He drove the car out silently, and they quickly got into the car. At the same time, Yin Qiue used an air barrier to protect the whole car. Fu Jingshan stepped on the accelerator, and the car sped forward. Some of the zombie rats, and even monkeys in front of the car were directly run over. After they rushed out of the encirclement, Xiaoqing slowly told them about her guess. After the apocalypse, it was no longer as convenient to contact as before. Although there were communication devices similar to mobile phones, if they wanted to communicate, they had to be within the range of a signal tower. There were very few signal towers in the country. Currently, there were only a few bases with signal towers. There were no signal towers in Jiang City, and there were no signal towers in the place where they were now. Therefore, it was impossible to contact their family quickly. They would only know if their family had been attacked when they returned to Jiang City. No matter what, we have to go back. Even if it's just a guess, we have to go back. They are all at home. If something happens to them, none of us can bear the consequences. I'd rather make an extra trip to make sure they are fine. Xiaoqing gritted her teeth and said, Don't be afraid, Qing. They will be fine. Don't forget that before we left, we planted all kinds of mutated plants around Jiang City with Tang Tianda. Even if the enemy is very strong, it won't be easy for them to break through the defense of the mutated plants and deal with the people and zombies in Jiang City. Yin Qiue analyzed clearly. I hope so. Xiaoqing's face was expressionless, but she couldn't hide the nervousness and anxiety in her heart. Even in the midst of danger, she could still remain calm. However, if the ones in danger were her family, she wouldn't be able to remain calm. Because of her anxiety, they went back very quickly. During the day and night, they took turns to drive and didn't stop. During the day, Yin Qiue and Mulan drove, while at night, Xiaoqing and Fu Jingshan drove. When one of them drove, the other three rested. Unless it was necessary, the car wouldn't stop. They even ate in the car. At this time, they didn't care about enjoying themselves. Speed was the prerequisite for everything. Usually, when the car stopped, it was because Yan Qiue and Mu Lin needed to go to the toilet. It couldn't be done in the car. The mountain path was particularly rugged. When the car was driving, it was fine if it was slow, but if it was fast, it would make people dizzy and nauseous. But no one cared about this. The car drove as if it was about to fly. In addition to the rugged mountain path, there was another characteristic, which was that it was very narrow. If a narrow car didn't drive well, the wheels might fall into the ravines on both sides. It would be impossible to pass two cars. Moreover, they could only walk down one path to the end. There was no turning back. Therefore, when Xiaoqing saw the car driving slowly in front of her, she wanted to hit them and send them flying. Although she was a little irritable because of anxiety and nervousness, she was still rational. She asked Yan Qiue to press the horn to urge the person in front to hurry up. The car in front was still moving slowly, so it was only slightly faster than walking. Xiaoqing was expressionless, but she couldn't hide the anger in her eyes. Yan Qiue kept on honking. After about a dozen honks, the window of the car in front of them rolled down. A head popped out and scolded, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up! Are you in a hurry to go to hell?" Not to mention Xiaoqing. Even Yan Qiue was a little angry. He said calmly, "Kill them?" Xiaoqing looked at the width of the road in front of them. It was indeed impossible to overtake them. But she wasn't a very irritable person. She was prepared to use peaceful means before resorting to force. She also stuck her head out and said, "We are in a hurry. Something happened at home. Can you drive faster?" It was probably a woman who heard the voice. A few heads popped out of the window. Some whistled and some shouted. "So it's a little girl. Are you in a hurry to go back and see your man? Don't be in a hurry. It's better if you die. You can live with us brothers. We don't have wives anyway." After he finished speaking, the people in the car began to laugh. Xiaoqing was very calm. She had already done the ritual, but they still didn't know what was good for them. Naturally, she didn't want to give them any more chances. "Stop the car." Xiaoqing rolled up her sleeves slightly. She was the first to open the door and get out of the car. As soon as she opened the door, the car in front of her also stopped. The group of people laughed and said, "Little girl, have you thought it through and decided to come and join us?" After Xiaoqing got out of the car, Mu Lin and Fu Jingshan followed her. Xiaoqing was very calm. Then she walked to the car in front of her. The people in the car also got out one after another. There were 5 people in total, and they should all be paranormals. The leader was about level 5. No wonder he was so arrogant. High-level paranormals were usually in a mercenary group or a large base. Not to mention in a small base, even in a mercenary group, a level 5 paranormals were very powerful. Although Xiaoqing didn't take them seriously, she did understand why they were so confident. The thinnest of the 5 smiled mischievously and said, "So there are 2 girls. You two take a look and see if there's anyone you like in our group. If there's anyone you like, then come with us. If there isn't, then it doesn't matter. In any case, you'll have to come with us." There shouldn't be anyone in the car. Mu Lin glanced at them and said. Fu Jingshan was very annoyed because someone dared to flirt with Xiaoqing in front of him. He sneered and kicked the empty car directly into the ditch. The ditch was very deep. Although there was no water in the ditch, it was not easy to get out. Besides, when the car fell into the ditch, the body of the car would definitely be injured. Their car was most likely destroyed. The few people immediately got angry. At first, they just wanted to flirt with Xiaoqing and didn't mean anything else. Later, when they saw Xiaoqing and Mu Lin, they realized that they were really beautiful, so they wanted to do something that they shouldn't have. They didn't expect that the 2 girls, one hotter than the other, would destroy their car directly. The leader's face darkened, and then he said, "You want to do it the hard way? We only wanted 2 girls, but now we want 2 girls in a car. You can't leave them here." He was also rather proud of himself, because he was a 5th-grade Earth Elemental warrior. In this kind of mountain path full of dirt, his ability would be even more effective. If it was in normal times, Xiaoqing would probably let Mu Lin and the others practice. Now, she just wanted to deal with this group of people quickly and go home. Chapter 595. Therefore Xiaoqing made the first move. She didn't do anything else but release her aura of a level 7 paranormal. In novels, when an invisible aura pressed down on a person, it could even make the person feel as if a mountain was pressing down on him. This was not a bluff but a fact. The reflection and reality were that many people would have some similar emotions like fear and restraint when they saw some superiors who looked more dignified. It was the same. However, this kind of reaction was magnified. They would be scared, stiff, and even unable to move. Then, Xiaoqing threw everyone into the ditch. She was too lazy to even kill people. After killing people, she still had to wash her hands, which was a waste of her time. Keep going, Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. The car behind them came. They got into the car and drove all the way. Before leaving, Mu Lin sneered and did something more cruel. She used her spiritual power to block the nerves in a certain part of their body. In other words, from now on, they could no longer get hard. This was a kind of punishment for their loose tongues, so that they would not harm girls in the future. The men lay in the ditch stunned. The thinnest one swallowed and whispered, "That aura. It should be a level 6 paranormal." The leader said with a dull look, "Impossible. I've met a level 6 paranormal before. But a level 5 paranormal shouldn't be so powerful." "Boss, you didn't even have the ability to resist," another man said hurriedly. The leader murmured, "It could be a level 7. When the rest of the men heard this, they all swallowed and felt their legs go weak. They had just teased a level 7 paranormal. A level 7. There should be only a handful of level 7 paranormal in the whole country. It was even possible that this was the only level 7 paranormal in the whole country. What on earth did they do? A level 7? How powerful is that?" The thin man widened his eyes and couldn't help but swallow. The boss said self-deprecatingly, "This almighty must have something urgent to do, so she didn't lower herself to our level. If she cared about what we said just now, we might have been lying on the ground forever." He sighed and said, "It's easy for a level 7 paranormal to kill us. We didn't even have a chance to struggle. We were really short-sighted. We thought we could do whatever we wanted just because we reached level 5. There's always someone better than us. We were lucky this time. Let's learn from our mistakes." The others nodded. Even the weakest among them was a level 3 metahuman. They thought they could hold their heads high, but it was because of this arrogance that made them speak so presumptuously. Fortunately, they were lucky and managed to keep their lives. Not to mention the future of these people, Xiaoqing and the others were actually uncomfortable from the bumpy ride, but none of them said anything. They all gritted their teeth and rushed back as fast as they could. Xiaoqing's family and friends were also their family and friends. None of them was not worried. They kept rushing day and night, and it took them half the time to reach Jiang City. They didn't encounter any resistance along the way, which made Xiaoqing doubt her own guess. When they were close to Jiang City, everyone was exhausted. Even Xiaoqing and Dai, who had strong constitutions, couldn't stand it, let alone two normal people. Chapter 596. Let's rest for a while, Xiaoqing said softly. Rest for half an hour and eat something. Then we'll go back. Mu Lin gritted his teeth and said, I'm fine. I'm not hungry either. Let's go back first. We're all exhausted now. If there's really an enemy attack after we go back, we can't do anything except become a burden. Let's rest for a while and recover our energy. There might be a fierce battle later, Xiaoqing said calmly. She asked someone to stop the car and took out some dry food. She ate a little with water. The dry food was hard, and those with bad teeth couldn't even chew it. The water was also cold, so it didn't have much of an effect on the dry food. No one spoke when they stopped to eat because they were all too tired. Although they took turns to drive, they couldn't sleep well in the car and would wake up at the slightest movement. On the way here, they were so tired that they almost fell asleep while driving. Later on, Xiaoqing was the one who drove the most. Dai didn't drive during the day. Only at night, when he was Fu Jingxian, would he drive. When Mu Lin and the others were too tired, Xiaoqing would take over. Out of the 24 hours in a day, Xiaoqing would be the one driving for at least 10 hours. So Xiaoqing was the most tired among them. Xiaoqing just didn't show it. She wanted to hold up half the sky for her family, and be the tall person who would hold up the sky even if it fell. After passing through the valley, they could get on the highway to Jiang City. When they got on the highway, the road would be much easier. When they were about to reach the narrow valley, Xiaoqing, who had recovered from the short rest, sensed that something was wrong. Stop the car first. What's wrong? Mu Lin, who was driving, quickly stopped the car. Xiaoqing got out of the car and observed carefully. Then she sneered. When I was still in the survival base in S City, I received a mission to go to another base. I passed by a similar valley. At that time, someone dug a pit and one of our cars was trapped. Mu Lin stuck his head out of the car window and narrowed his eyes. You're saying that someone set a trap in front? If you look carefully, you'll see that there's a patch of soil in front. The color looks relatively new. It's similar to the road here. Who knows how many people walk on it and step on it? How can the color of the soil be this newly renovated color? Xiaoqing pointed at a spot and said, although the color of this place is not very different from other places, if you look carefully, you can still see it. It can only deceive those careless people. Mu Lin's mouth twitched. Then he said, other than you, who would observe the color of the soil while driving? What should we do now? There are two possibilities. First, it's an ordinary bandit who was trapped and robbed here. Second, the people who are targeting us have finally arrived. They want to stop us from going back. Xiaoqing said softly, this is the vicinity of Jiang City. Zombies are rampant, and there are no robbers at all. If they dare to settle down here, then there is only the second possibility. If it is really the second possibility, then they have indeed attacked Jiang City. Maybe they have two goals. If we can find out that they have attacked Jiang City and return, then it is best, because we are tired from the journey, and it is the best opportunity for them to attack. If we don't find out, then it is okay. They have enough time to break into Jiang City, and the people inside won't threaten us. No matter which one, it is a good choice for them. Mu Lin sneered. Then they've miscalculated. Whether it's us or Jiang City, we're not easy to deal with. We're two tough bones. Either one can bite off their teeth. Everyone get ready. The battle is about to start. Xiaoqing released her two flowers and let them sit on the car, ready for battle. Then they drove the car over. When they arrived at the pit, everyone walked down. Mu Lin even naughtily stretched out his hand and poked the layer of soil above the trap. The people who had been waiting in the dark for a long time saw the situation. If they still didn't know that Xiaoqing had seen through their trap, then they were really retarded. The ambushers who had been lying in ambush for a long time immediately came down from both sides of the mountain. The leader was the woman who was holding the skull. There was also a little boy who looked a little ugly. The reason why he was ugly was because he had freckles and buck teeth. He was short and his limbs were thick and short. If he stuck in the ground with only his yellow hair, he would look like a carrot. Carrot sat on a 2-meter-tall gorilla. They looked like a beast. In addition to these two people, there were countless strange things behind them. For example, there was a monster with a human head and a snake body that could spit fire. There was also a giant spider. When it jumped down from the mountain, the human face on its abdomen was exposed. There were also countless normal high-level zombies and mutated animals. Xiaoqing inserted Guangguang and was the first to attack. The vines were like long whips, whistling past and hitting a high-level zombie. The zombie's head was directly whipped away. When the zombie's body fell down, its head was still spinning in the air like a small top. After hitting the target, the vine in Xiaoqing's hand turned into a long snake. It was as if it was alive. It slithered around and looked for prey. Once it found the prey's weakness, it would immediately bite it. Big Flower and Little Flower were not willing to be left behind. They tied up Little Flower and ate Big Flower. They were simply invincible. Air Dai and the others immediately joined the battle. Among them, the most ferocious one was probably Yin Qiyue, because those who died in his hands were either squeezed into a meat patty or turned into a human firework. Bang! That kind of thing. Xiaoqing didn't want to be entangled with them. After all, the most important thing was the people at home. She tried to end the battle quickly, but the opponents didn't give her a chance. They were playing a war of attrition with her. Xiaoqing didn't have any expression at all. She didn't even look angry. She wantonly slaughtered the high-level zombies and mutated animals, trying to eliminate them directly. She was so ruthless that almost no zombies or mutated animals could be her opponent. Soon, more than half of the enemies on the scene had disappeared, but most of them were killed by Xiaoqing. The ugly boy and the woman holding the skull, who had been commanding the zombies, couldn't sit still anymore. They screamed and pounced on Xiaoqing. Chapter 597. The ugly little boy screamed as soon as he came up. His scream was sharp and unpleasant, but that was not the point. The point was that his scream was accompanied by sound waves. If there was glass in front of him, it might have been completely broken. The moment the sound waves spread over, Yan Qiyu reacted quickly by erecting an air barrier. However, the barrier only lasted for a few seconds before it cracked and broke. Mulin's face changed. Although she was a psychic paranormal, she did not have a defensive ability, so she subconsciously used her own psychic attack. The psychic paranormal collided with the sound waves. In an instant, the invisible collision was like a powerful bomb exploding. The whistling wind almost blew people down. When the smoke dissipated, there was only a big pit left on the ground. There were many zombies around, but they were blown up and only had broken limbs left. Mulin breathed a sigh of relief. She was afraid that Xiaoqing would be hurt, so she made up her mind to find a way to develop a defensive ability. In the past, she did not have anyone or anything to protect. She only focused on advancing. Now it was different. She had Xiaoqing. She had someone to protect, so she could not be like before. Xiaoqing did not say anything. She pointed at the ugly little boy, and the big flower that was ready to attack immediately rushed over. The moment it rushed over, the flower opened its head, and a shallow transparent gas was sprayed out. Even though the ugly little boy was a high-level zombie, he could not help but feel dizzy. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough for the big flower to take him down. The big flower closed its bud, and a human figure could be seen in the bud. It was constantly struggling, but the big flower did not move. It was constantly grinding its petals, trying to digest the human in its stomach. The first reaction of the woman who was holding the skull was to save the little boy. However, the big flower had been with Xiaoqing for a long time, and had become a flower spirit. As soon as it succeeded, it began to run back. Little Blossom, who was right behind her, quickly extended his tentacles to stop the woman. The two flowers cooperated very well. By the time the woman broke through Little Blossom's obstruction, Big Blossom had already run behind Xiaoqing. The high-level zombie in its stomach kept struggling, and the corrosive solution couldn't completely corrode it in a short period of time. Even if the zombie lost its arms and legs, it could still struggle to move, not to mention that it was just some flesh that had been corroded. The big flower had difficulty digesting, and sometimes it was so anxious that it jumped on the spot. Xiaoqing saw this and calmly opened the big flower's petals. She reached in and pinched the little boy's head. At the moment when he was about to explode, she crushed his head. The prey stopped struggling. The big flower shook its head contentedly and began to digest the prey in its stomach. The woman who was holding the skull saw that the situation was not good, so she turned and ran. She did not even stop her. As soon as the woman ran, those strange-looking creatures also ran. As soon as they left, the remaining soldiers were no longer a problem. Xiaoqing and the others quickly cleared all the ambushing soldiers, and then continued to move forward. These high-level zombies were really human-like. It was just that they did not know if they had memories. Xiaoqing threw away the thoughts in her mind, and quickly rushed to Jiang City. When they were near Jiang City, they saw zombies and beasts from afar, surrounding the city. However, they could not get close, because there were all kinds of mutated plants near the city walls. These mutated plants were very fierce. For example, the vines could easily whip the zombies and beasts far away. There were also blood-sucking vines and other plants guarding. For a while, the zombies could not do anything to the plants at the outermost layer. Even if they broke the outermost layer of the city walls, it did not matter. The zombies in the city were not to be trifled with. Chapter 598. Yi had already gathered all the zombies in the city, and they were ready to attack at the inner city wall. As long as they got close, the zombies would rush up. Jiang City was like a natural stronghold. It couldn't be more difficult to take it down. Xiaoqing heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, nothing happened. She was relieved to see that Jiang City was fine. She had already thought of the worst result along the way. She was already mentally prepared. She didn't expect that what appeared in front of her was the best result. Xiaoqing was very satisfied now. At least her family was fine. That was the best thing. When they arrived outside Jiang City, the zombies and beasts seemed to have received an order. They retreated like the tide. It was very orderly. Xiaoqing's face was expressionless as he looked at the army of zombies and beasts that were slowly retreating. Although he was surprised in his heart, he was even more afraid. Who was secretly controlling everything? Why was this person targeting her? Was he her enemy? Or did he have other intentions? No matter what, one thing was certain. The person in the dark was her enemy. Xiaoqing led her companions into the city. On both sides of the city walls, there were many zombie beasts tied up by vampiric vines and other plants. They had all been injected with some kind of anesthetic and were hanging peacefully on the city walls. These were all very good research materials. Yin Qiue could go back and study them to find out why they were controlled by humans. When Xiaoqing arrived at the city gate, it had already opened automatically. Xiao Tong was the first to rush over, followed by Little Bun. There was no fear on her face, only determination. Little Tong has grown up. Xiaoqing sighed and touched her head. Yan Hanqing and the others were still transporting vegetables outside. They didn't know that Jiang City was attacked. Only Xiao Tong was at home. Although Yi was helping, it was already very good that Xiao Tong could hold up half the sky. You did well this time. My little Tong is getting better and better. After Xiaoqing sighed, she carried Little Bun in her arms. Little Bun had become quite wild under her care during this period of time. He played everywhere and had become the big brother of Jiang City. After entering Xiaoqing's arms, the Little Bun acted like a spoiled child. Mama, let me tell you something. A strange-looking uncle came to me and said that he wanted to take me out to play, but I didn't go. I'm very obedient, right? Xiaoqing narrowed her eyes. Listening to Little Bun's description, it seemed that before the zombies and beasts besieged the city, someone had already contacted Little Bun. However, for some reason Little Bun rejected them. They didn't dare to use violence. Xiaoqing breathed a sigh of relief, and then said, Bao Bao did the right thing. If you meet a stranger who wants to take you away, you must not agree, because they are very likely to be bad people. After they take you away, you will never see your mother again. The Little Bun hugged Xiaoqing tightly and said, I'm very obedient. I'll go with them. Bao Bao is so obedient. Xiaoqing sighed, and then said, Little Tong, let's go in first. Don't just stand at the door. Is Yi here? Xiao Tong hurriedly used her mind to tell her. Brother Yi is in the laboratory. Xiaoqing handed Little Bun to Xiao Tong, and then said, I'll go to the laboratory first. Take Little Bun home and stay there. I'll be back in a while. Xiao Tong nodded, and then took Little Bun home. Xiaoqing took her little friend to the laboratory. For many zombies in Jiang City, the laboratory was a nightmare. They were turned from ordinary people and superpowered people into zombies in the laboratory. However, even if Yi was doing research, he would never do it inside. At this moment, there were only two people in the laboratory. One was Yi, and the other was Little Yu. Little Yu was lying next to the laboratory table, openly watching Yi do the experiment. His eyes were rolling around curiously. Yi would occasionally touch his head, but most of the time, he was immersed in his research. When Xiaoqing came over, he was patiently studying something. He only reacted when Xiaoqing patted him on the shoulder. He hurriedly said, You're back? You're back early. I received news that someone had bad intentions towards Jiang City, so I hurriedly rushed back. I didn't expect you to deal with it better than I expected. Xiaoqing said calmly. Is everything okay in Jiang City? Yi shook his head. It's fine. It's very good. Only then did Xiaoqing hand over the zombie beasts that she had plucked from the city wall, as well as the half-zombie that Dehua had spat out, to Yi. Then she said, on the way back, I also encountered an assassination attempt. The other party seemed to have many high-level zombies. I want you and Chiyue to see what method the person in the dark used to mass-produce high-level zombies and control them. Yi was originally a research fanatic. When he saw the corpses on the ground, he was interested. Leave it to me and Chiyue. We'll definitely get the results in 3 days. Yin Chiyue held Xiaoqing's chin and kissed her, then said, after you go back, take a bath and have a good rest. You must be exhausted from the journey. Have a good sleep, or else my heart will ache. Xiaoqing also said, you too. Don't study immediately. Rest first and leave it to Yi. After you've rested, you can help again. Okay. Yin Chiyue was happy in his heart. He said softly, I definitely won't tire my body out. After all, you were the one who nurtured my body bit by bit. How can I destroy your results? Quickly go back and rest. I want to eat porridge. When you wake up, make it for me. Okay, I'll send it to you when it's done. It's very simple to make porridge. I'll make it before I take a bath, and let Xiaotong watch over it. When the porridge is done, I'll ask her to send it to you. You can eat it with Yi. After showing off their love for a long time, Xiaoqing only remembered that Yi was beside her when she was about to leave. She casually mentioned it. Yi said sourly, are you bullying me because I'm single? This show of love can be smelled from dozens of miles away. It's so sweet that it's sickening. All right. Those who should rest, rest. Those who should work, go back to work. Don't provoke me here. Xiaoqing raised her eyebrows and said lightly, how many zombies are there in Jiang City? There should be a few good-looking ones. Do you want me to pick 2 to warm your bed? Inya's face turned green. Scram. Hurry up and scram. Before Xiaoqing left, she said, to be honest, I'll pick a few for you. Scram as far as you can. Yi roared. Chapter 599. After cooking the porridge, Xiaoqing slept for the entire day. From sunrise to sunset, she slept all the way until midnight before waking up. When she stretched her body, she could hear her bones cracking. All her fatigue was chased away. That feeling was very good. Xiaoqing opened the door and prepared to wash her face. It was the middle of the night. But if she were to sleep again, she definitely wouldn't be able to fall asleep. Just as she walked to the sink, Xiaoqing saw Er Dai supporting himself with both hands on the sink and looking at himself in the mirror expressionlessly. Sometimes, Xiaoqing would think that people should be a little muddle-headed sometimes. Only by turning a blind eye to things would they be able to live a happier life. However, the person who didn't want to be muddle-headed was Fu Jingshan. He raised his head and glanced at Xiaoqing before asking, when did you find out? I know you too well. That's why I sensed that something was wrong from the start. Xiaoqing wasn't going to pretend to be muddle-headed anymore. She calmly said, at the start I couldn't be sure. But after interacting with you for a long time, the cat was out of the bag. When did you recover? The last time I had a breakthrough, it felt like I had a very, very long dream. In the dream, I saw myself getting to know you and experiencing everything like a bystander. Fu Jingshan said softly. That feeling was very strange, but it was also very good. Xiaoqing searched her body and found her cigarette box. She took out the last cigarette and lit it. The smoke that filled the air blurred her facial features and covered her expression. Even her voice sounded a little ethereal. If you want to leave, let me know in advance, so that I can be prepared. There was something that Xiaoqing didn't say. She was going to make a good chain to lock him up. If it was a year ago, she would probably choose to let go. After all, a melon that was forcefully picked would not be sweet. However, a year later, even if she broke Fu Jingshan's legs and locked him up, she wouldn't let him leave. Even if this melon was bitter, she would slowly taste it, bite it carefully, and eat it bit by bit. I won't leave, Fu Jingshan said instinctively. After saying this, he was stunned for a moment before he slowly said, I haven't fully recovered yet. At night, I'll regain my memory. During the day, I'll become Er Dai again. Xiaoqing responded softly, her voice carrying a hint of unhappiness. It seemed that the matter of making the chain had to be brought forward. Otherwise, she wouldn't know when she ran away. It would be more reassuring to lock it up. Just like in those stories and TV dramas where people said, "I love you, so I let go. As long as you're happy, it's fine." Those who were so selfless would usually be single for the rest of their lives and suffer for the rest of their lives. Xiaoqing didn't want to be a good person. She just needed to be selfish. Even if Fu Jingxian hated her in the future, it didn't matter. This was probably what they meant by husband and wife singing together. After being together with a pervert for a long time, one would really become a pervert. And it's all Yin Chiyue's fault, Xiaoqing thought shamelessly. Fu Jingxian held it in for a long time before he slowly said, "Air Dai loves you." He was a little thin-skinned. The confession was at the tip of his tongue, but he swallowed it back down. Instead, it became this sentence. This sentence actually meant, "Air Dai loves you. Air Dai and I are the same person, so I love you too. I won't leave." But in Xiaoqing's ears it became, "Air Dai loves you. I haven't recovered yet, so I won't leave. We'll talk again after I recover." Xiaoqing was very unhappy. She nodded and blew out a smoke ring. She planned to go back and make a long, sturdy chain for backup. Chapter 600. In the latter half of the night, Xiaoqing sat in her room, thinking about where to lock them up. At dawn, Xiaoqing went out to make porridge, which was light and delicate. It was good for the stomach to have a bowl of porridge in the morning. After cooking the porridge, she put it on the table, so that the people who woke up could drink it as long as they saw it. Then, she took some porridge out, and went to see Yin Chiyue. When Xiaoqing arrived, Yin Chiyue and Yinyi were dissecting a corpse. The corpse had been dissected beyond recognition by them. There were piles of discarded body parts on the ground. Xiaoqing put the porridge on the table, then said to them, "Come and eat first. We'll continue after breakfast." Then, she cleared away the unwanted pieces of the corpses on the ground, making the strange smell in the air a little fainter. The two men looked very tired. Hearing Xiaoqing's call, they washed their hands and walked over. They each had a bowl of porridge with pickles and began to eat. Although there were still many corpses on the ground, and they had just dissected one of them, the two men were not affected at all. They enjoyed the porridge. After cleaning up, Xiaoqing sat aside and watched them eat. She asked from time to time, "How's the research going?" "We've got some clues," Yin Chiyue said in a low voice. "One of the corpses has been transformed." "It's just like what I did to myself," Yinyi said. Yinyi interrupted and said, "But the other party is even more ruthless. He seems to have a way to create high-level zombies and zombie beasts. After creating them, he transplants the upper half of the high-level zombies into the bodies of the zombie beasts. So this kind of modified thing has the strong body of a beast and the intelligence of a high-level zombie at the same time. But the success rate shouldn't be very high. Otherwise, it would be really unbelievable. We haven't found the way to create zombies, but we found that the nuclei in these corpses are smaller than those of ordinary high-level zombies, and there are impurities in them. In other words, this kind of transformation is not as good as that of ordinary high-level zombies, but the advantage is that he can create a lot of them." Yin Chiyue frowned and said, "I just don't know if there's a limit. If the limit isn't big, then it'll be troublesome." That was indeed troublesome. The other party would have a machine that could continuously produce high-level zombies. He didn't need to care about the zombies at all, because he could make more if they died. He was just like the legendary necromancers. Xiaoqing calmly said, "It's impossible for there to be no restrictions. Otherwise, there would be more people coming to kill us. Moreover, if there were no restrictions, wouldn't it be heaven-defying? Everything in the world is like this. The stronger you are, the greater the restrictions. So I don't think we need to worry too much about this." The two men nodded, and then Yin Chiyue said, "According to our previous observation, zombies can really awaken their previous memories when they reach a certain level. Since they were created by that person, they should have their own memories. No matter their appearance or mind, they are no different from ordinary humans. I think we should remind all the bases that if that person is really ambitious, He may attack all the survivor bases. Well, I'll send the message in a moment, Xiaoqing said calmly. The most important thing is still our own strength. I went to take a look before, and the thing planted in the courtyard seems to be about to ripen. Everyone's strength has been stuck at this level for a long time. It's time to improve. The strange plant that looked like a heart was not far away from ripening. She could feel it from far away. It was emitting surging energy waves. In the past, when she had nothing to do, Xiaoqing liked to go to the vicinity, stretch out a vine, and insert it into the red soil. While absorbing energy, she chatted with others. So she often went to check it out. After such a long time, it was finally ripe. She would study how to use it, and then improve everyone's strength. Strength was the best guarantee. When they finished eating, it suddenly began to rain. Xiaoqing didn't leave, but sat by the window to watch them work. Occasionally, she would raise her head to look outside. After doomsday, the color of the rainwater looked very dirty, and it was not drinkable. It was mixed with a lot of harmful substances, including corpse poison. After all, many rotting corpses polluted the water source. When the evaporated water turned into rainwater, it absorbed the dirty things in the air. Therefore, rainwater could be said to be the dirtiest thing now. Fortunately, even after doomsday, the weather like rain and snow had become less and less. After all, even the sun was rarely seen, not to mention the steaming water vapor that wanted to go to the sky. Xiaoqing leaned on the windowsill and looked outside. Although Jiang City was not big, it was empty everywhere. After all, there were too few living people in Jiang City. Most of them were zombies. Zombies weren't like humans, where a family would find a house to live in. It was orderly and harmonious. Most of the time, they would run around the streets. Sometimes, Yinyi would instruct the zombies to carry cleaning tools and clean the streets. When it rained, there were not many zombies. They were scattered and walked around the streets, without a trace of vitality. In the past, Xiaoqing had never thought that there would be a day where she would be away from human society and live in harmony with a group of zombies. But when the day came, she didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, she was very comfortable. If she was alone, she would probably be lonely, but her family and friends were all here. When everything is over, let's hold the wedding in Jiang City. Just invite some friends and spread the news. If they don't want to come, then forget it. Xiaoqing held her chin and then said, no one knew what the future would be like, whether the doomsday would worsen or get better step by step. But people should always have something to look forward to. There was a saying that said, if you don't have a dream, then what's the difference between you and a salted fish? When it came to marriage, Yin Qiwa was much gentler. Of course, this gentleness referred to his expression and voice, not the movements of his hands. We don't need to invite too many people for the wedding. It's too noisy. Even if we invite too many people, most probably won't dare to come, he said softly. In fact, what they lacked was a ceremony. Without this ceremony, they were no different from husband and wife. Chapter 601. In the end, they still couldn't figure out how the person in the dark created those high-level zombies. The only thing they could see was that there was a very special energy fluctuation in the crystal nuclei of those zombies. No matter if it was zombies or zombie beasts, they were all products of human experiments. Xiaoqing touched his chin and said, let's catch 2 live ones next time and try to study them. The 2 men nodded, and Xiaoqing and Yin Qiwa left the lab. Yin Qiwa went to take a shower. After all, she had just finished an experiment, so there was still a rotten and bloody smell on her body. It smelled really bad. Not to mention Xiaoqing. Even he couldn't stand it. While Yin Qiwa was taking a shower, Xiaoqing was sitting on the sofa and reading a book. The little bun ran in and said, Mama, a handsome uncle sent a letter. Then he handed a letter to Xiaoqing. Thank you, baby. Xiaoqing opened the letter and found it was from the capital, and it wasn't good news. Not long after Xiaoqing left, the situation outside began to deteriorate. The pollution of the water became more and more serious. Because the polluted water was used to irrigate the land was also polluted. Although the vegetables that had just grown were poisonous to a certain extent, at least they looked intact. But now, As long as you cut those vegetables open, you would find that their cores were rotten. Losing the vegetables and grains that were grown on the land, which was an important source of human food, immediately caused people to panic. In that case, they could only eat the grains that they had hoarded before. But how long could they last? Sooner or later, they would run out. What would happen after that? The panic spread slowly, because it wasn't only one base that was like this, but all the bases were like this. The higher-ups of the bases were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. However, they didn't have a solution. Some bases began to use the water created by the paranormals to irrigate the land, hoping to restore the land to its previous state. However, the facts proved that being contaminated was being contaminated. There was no way to recover. In despair, many people chose to commit suicide. Suicide was very common in the apocalypse. Since the beginning of the apocalypse, many people had chosen to end their own lives. You can't blame them for being cowardly. When you see someone you know surrounded by zombies and eaten alive, and you can only be locked in a small room, without food, water, and the ability and courage to rush out, you can't see any hope of being saved. Would you choose to starve to death, or end your own life? Of course, there were more people who didn't even have the courage to face death. In the end, they starved to death in their rooms, or ran out of their rooms and died in the zombie crowd. However, with the gradual development of the apocalypse, there were very few cases of people committing suicide. After all, people's lives had become peaceful, and everyone had seen the hope of survival. Naturally, no one would choose to die. But now, something scarier than zombies had appeared. Humans would lose their food supply. Many bases began to stop providing free food, or reduce the amount of food they provided. As the food supply in their homes gradually decreased, many old people chose to commit suicide. They didn't commit suicide because they were afraid, but because they didn't want to waste food. They wanted to leave more food for their children, so that they could live longer. They thought that they were old, and had lived long enough. They didn't want to be a burden to their children. Chapter 602. This kind of thing happened more and more frequently. All the bases in the country became gloomy. The only one that was better off was the Qin family in the capital. The last batch of vegetables that had been shipped to the Qin family had just solved their urgent needs. In the letter, Old Master Qin said that he hoped that Xiao Qing would hide the fact that the vegetables in her vegetable base were still very good. Old Master Qin had said that sometimes people had to be selfish. If they were discovered, there would definitely be people who would use the slogan of, "For the sake of humanity," to force Xiao Qing to reveal the secret of why the vegetables she grew were not affected. It might even lead to a siege. After all, many people thought that those who were not of their kind must have different intentions. In their eyes, Xiao Qing was a zombie and a heretic. If Xiao Qing refused to tell them her secret, she would definitely be besieged. And they would not feel guilty at all, because they would besiege zombies. Therefore, Master Qin asked her not to send any more vegetables, and to hide the secret. Xiao Qing read the whole letter calmly. She was very calm. She was very clear that the secret could not be hidden. If someone was willing to investigate, he or she would find out soon. The vegetables were exported from Jiang City, so she didn't care about being discovered. Calculating the time, the vegetables should be eaten up. Xiao Qing immediately called Xiao Tong to come over. She asked Xiao Tong to escort the second batch of vegetables, and her letter to the capital with several senior zombies. In the letter, she said clearly that no one could take anything away from her, unless she was willing to give it away. The Qin family was also her family. They didn't need to talk to each other. She also asked Master Qin to send people to pick up vegetables and fruits regularly. After all, most of the people in Jiang City were zombies. It was inconvenient to escort things. 6 days later, Yan Hanqing and the others returned, covered in dust. They also brought back something. They brought back a plant. It was round and looked like a ball. It had a mouth. As long as its belly was poked, it would make a sound of ha-ha. Although this thing looked stupid, cute, and strange, it was actually a good item. There was a liquid in its stomach that could instantly heal a person's wound. As long as it was not a fatal wound, it could save anyone. Previously, Xiaoqing had said that she was going to tame the seventh mutant plant, and she hoped that it would be a healing-type plant. After all, that was what she needed right now. Coincidentally, Yan Hanqing came across it, so he brought it back. Xiaoqing tamed the plant without hesitation, and named it Dabai. Dabai liked to lie on people's heads. When it was needed, it would extend its white and soft tentacles that were like jelly. When it touched a person's wound, liquid would flow out from the tip of the tentacles. Xiaoqing liked it very much. She especially liked to pinch it. Therefore, when she first got it, the entire Jiang city was filled with Dabai's haha laughter. Fortunately, there were not many people in Jiang city. Otherwise, someone would definitely sue Xiaoqing for disturbing the people. A few men liked her very much. She was very energetic and looked much younger. She almost became a child again. Moreover, after Dabai was born, even the little bun abandoned Yiya. Every day, he would act like a spoiled child to Xiaoqing. "Mama, I want to hug Dabai." Yiya felt wronged and hugged her only big ear. She hid in a corner and cried secretly. She looked very pitiful. Along with the vegetables, Xiaoqing's letter arrived in the capital. After old Master Qin read the letter, although he said that she was fooling around, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. His daughter, even though she was his wife, she was more filial than his biological daughter. He hadn't raised this daughter for nothing. She knew how to dote on people. Then he was worried. He knew very well what those people were like. Once the matter was exposed, they would definitely do anything to deal with his daughter. Old Master Qin had never given in to anyone in his life. In the end, he gritted his teeth and got someone to send some vegetables and a letter to the Tan family. Old Master Tan was Xiaoqing's biological father. Didn't you see that he even sent Tan Xiao to Xiaoqing? If the Tan family dared to stand up for Xiaoqing, then he would be willing to give half of his daughter to the Tan family, even if he had to grit his teeth. When old Master Tan received the vegetables and the letter, he was a little confused. He and old Master Qin had never gotten along well. He had never received a gift from old Master Qin before. When he opened the message, he understood why old Master Qin had sent the item over. Old Master Tan had never let down heaven, earth, or anyone else in his life, but he had let down these two people. One was Xiaoqing, and the other was Xiaoqing's biological mother. After he read the letter, he was silent for a long time. In the end, he ordered someone to transport the vegetables and store them. That night, old Master Tan sat in the study all night. He only returned to his room to rest when the sun rose. After all, this decision concerned the survival of the entire Tan family. He had let down Xiaoqing, but it was very likely that he would destroy the entire Tan family for the sake of his daughter. Was it worth it? Not only was he Xiaoqing's father, but he was also the head of the Tan family. He had to be responsible for the entire family. The next morning, when old Master Tan walked out of the study, his voice was soft but firm. He said one word: "It's worth it." He had sacrificed his entire life for the Tan family, for the country, and for the people. It was time for him to be selfish for once. His daughter had been stolen when she was very young. She had suffered for more than 20 years, and had even turned into a zombie during the apocalypse. That was his daughter. He had even held Xiaoqing when she was very young. Her soft and small body was like a ball of cotton. He was afraid that he would hurt and break the child if he squeezed even a little harder. However, his daughter had suffered for more than 20 years. How could he bear to let his daughter be bullied like that again? So what if she was a zombie? A zombie was also his daughter. She was also his flesh and blood. If anyone wanted to bully his daughter, they would have to step over his dead body. They would have to trample the entire Tan family into dust. Otherwise, no one would be able to bully his daughter. Old Master Tan had a hard time making this decision. However, once he made the decision, he felt relaxed. It was as if a mountain had been lifted off his shoulders. The old man's back was slightly bent. As he walked toward his bedroom, he mumbled to himself, "I will protect our daughter. Even if I have to give up something that I have guarded for 50 to 60 years, I will not hesitate to do so." "Master, do you want to eat something?" the housekeeper asked kindly. Old Master Tan sniffed. He suddenly remembered that the vegetables that old Master Qin, had sent over were grown by his daughter. He said vegetable porridge. Use the vegetables that were sent over today. Chapter 603. The two old men, who were over 50 years old, had been fighting for their entire lives. But in the end, they reached a consensus on one thing. It had to be said that this was a miracle, just as old Master Qin had expected. After Xiaoqing sent vegetables and fruits over for the second time, there were people openly and secretly trying to sound him out. After all, everyone knew that Jingdu could no longer grow healthy fruits and vegetables. If this continued, it would be over sooner or later. No one didn't want to live, but there were more people who wanted to make an issue out of it. Their thoughts were relatively simple. That was to be able to transport such a large amount of fruits and vegetables. It meant at least two things. First, there was a place where the soil was not polluted and could grow healthy fruits and vegetables. Second, this place was not small. If they could find the place where these fruits and vegetables were produced, they would control the lifeline of the whole country. After all, after testing, they found that all the bases in the country had been polluted. In other words, the place where old Master Qin sent the fruits and vegetables might be the last clean land in the country. Being able to grow fruits and vegetables meant that this place could also grow food. If they controlled food, wouldn't it mean that they controlled the lifeline of the whole country? As long as they controlled this place, it meant that they would have power, status, and everything. No one could resist this temptation. So in less than a day, there were more than 10 people who came to probe old Master Qin. Most of them didn't ask directly. First, the situation wasn't at its worst yet. Second, with old Master Qin's status, they didn't dare to be too forceful. The Qin family's power was extraordinary. If they wanted to use force, they had to consider whether they were qualified to do so. Although the Qin family was very powerful, there were still a few forces in Jingdu that weren't afraid of the Qin family. They were just relatively calm and were still observing. If things really got to the worst point, they would also take action. As for face, no matter how important face was it more important than life? At the same time, these people cursed the Qin family in their hearts. They controlled such a good place, but they didn't share it with everyone. They even wanted to keep it to themselves. No wonder they were old foxes who had a high status from the peaceful era to the end of the world. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. Some of the more thin-skinned ones began to find excuses. They felt that they were thinking for the sake of the entire human race. The Qin family should selflessly announce it and not hide it. They were extremely selfish. Although the two types of people had different ideas, their goals were the same. As the situation slowly worsened, this group of people began to become anxious. They no longer cared about their reputation. They investigated openly and secretly. They all wanted to find Xiaoqing. In fact, if they were to really investigate, it would be very easy to find out. After all, it was such a large convoy. It would be easy to find out where they had passed through and where they had rested. Once the route was followed, it would be clear at a glance where the departure point was. After old Master Qin didn't make any progress, they started to check the route. Although Xiaoqing's people rarely rested in the base, they still rested after all. The group of people in the capital was ruthless. It took them a week to figure out the route map. After they found the route map, they looked at it and were stunned. This was because the most likely departure point was Jiang City. The person who drew the map was also stunned. He stammered, "Did we check wrongly? Do you want to check again?" Chapter 604. Not necessarily. Maybe someone cleaned up Jiang City and moved in. Everything is possible. Send some people to check it out. The person in charge gritted his teeth and said, they couldn't let go of any hope. They would rather kill the wrong person than let go of any hope. If it wasn't Jiang City, then it would be difficult to find it. According to the map, it must be near Jiang City. However, there weren't any survivor bases near Jiang City, because there were too many zombies in Jiang City. In the beginning, there were also bases that tried to clean up Jiang City. After all, Jiang City was a very prosperous city before Doomsday. It had good conditions in all aspects. If they could clean up Jiang City and move in, it would be much more convenient. At that time, nearly 100 paranormals went there. In the end, they ran back in embarrassment because there were too many zombies in Jiang City. They suffered a great loss. In the end, they didn't dare to have any ideas about Jiang City. Jiang City became a real zombie nest. Everyone gave up on it. Now, for the sake of a small hope, they still had to send some people to check the current situation of Jiang City. Was it possible that those vegetables and fruits really came from Jiang City? If they really came from Jiang City, then the problem would be tricky. Those who had the ability to clean up the entire Jiang City must be very powerful. It would be very difficult to force the other party to give up the secret of their base. If it were them, they wouldn't be willing to reveal the secret either. After all, the secret was too valuable. If it was done properly, it could even turn Jiang City into the largest survivor base in the country, or the most superior one. Of course, if it wasn't done properly, it would cause everyone to besiege and destroy it instantly. It was very normal. After several forces received the news, they all sent people to check the entire Jiang City. When they sent people to check, Xiaoqing was leading her friends to cultivate the land. She was also clear about the situation outside. Now she was ready to bring the whole Qin family over. The Qin family was a big family and had a lot of people. In order to feed the Qin family, the existing cultivation base was a little small. Especially now, there were only fruits and vegetables in the cultivation base. Eating only fruits and vegetables was not enough to satisfy her hunger. She had to open a new plantation and plant a large number of crops, such as wheat and rice as her staple food. When the time came, even if the entire Qin family moved over, she would be able to raise them. Tang Tianda was still in Hope Survivor Base. He hadn't returned yet. After all, Hope Survivor Base was still under construction. His presence was needed. The soil of Hope Survivor Base had also been infected. Tang Tianda had sent a message to Xiaoqing, asking if they could sell some vegetables and fruits to Hope Survivor Base every month. Xiaoqing replied to him with 2 short sentences: "Come back to work, and then sell vegetables and fruits to Hope Survivor Base at half price." Xiaoqing's team led by Tan Xiao followed by Xiaoqing, who looked like she would faint at any moment. After all, a normal person living in a place full of zombies, it would be a lie to say that they weren't afraid. They were all there as commanders. The real work was done by the zombies, and they were not low-level zombies. Low-level zombies had hard bodies, so they couldn't do a lot of work. The ones with the highest level were the ones who followed Yin Yi for his revenge. Because they were all man-made, they were very intelligent. It was easy for them to do some work that ordinary zombies couldn't do. For example, digging the ground with a hoe. Jiang City was too big. Except for some areas that were occupied by zombies and Xiaoqing's living quarters, the rest was all empty land. The gardens and parks were all cleaned up and turned into vegetable gardens and farmland to grow some food. Those zombies worked hard without complaint, and they didn't need to be paid. They were the best labor force. Because of the large number of people, it took only 1 day for them to open up a large piece of land. 3 days later, a large cultivation base and a breeding base were built. There were 3 main crops in the cultivation base: rice, wheat, and corn. After all, the seeds of these 3 crops were the most common and the most suitable to be used as staple food. In addition to these 3 crops, there were fewer crops such as potatoes. Potatoes were purely wild. After all, it had been too long since the beginning of the apocalypse. Even if there were potatoes left, they would have already rotted, not to mention germinating and growing. However, rice and other crops could still be planted here. Next to it was a vegetable cultivation base. Cabbage was the main crop in the vegetable cultivation base. As far as the eye could see, there was a field of green mixed with white. In addition to cabbage, there were some small rapeseed, spinach, eggplant, chili beans, and cucumbers. It was more diverse. The main crop that was transported out was cabbage, and the rest were left for their own people to eat. Fruits were more diverse. Basically, all the fruits that existed before the apocalypse could be seen here. After all, after the apocalypse, fruits had also mutated and became very adaptable. No matter where they were planted, they could be planted. There was no need to distinguish between southern and northern fruits. For example, in Shaoqing's fruit cultivation base, there might be coconut or banana trees next to the apple trees, and pineapple or durian trees next to the strawberries. These fruits were generally not transported out. At most, they would send some to their own people to eat. Especially strawberries and the like, there was no way to transport them at all. They were too easy to spoil. Things like planting vegetables could also be addictive, especially after the apocalypse. When Shaoqing and the others were planting, they simply could not stop. It was a special sense of accomplishment and motivation. Next to it was a newly built breeding base. There was a large area of grassland. The grassland was also artificially planted. After planting, it was fenced up. After finding a lot of cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens, ducks, and so on, they were kept in captivity. There was a fence in the middle, separating into a circle. There were all kinds of animals in the circle. When it was time to eat, they could directly come here to catch them. After everything was done, Shaoqing clapped her hands. Standing in the distance, she looked at the base that she had built with her own hands. She had a special sense of accomplishment and security in her heart. Even if the outside was really polluted to the point of death, it did not matter. The vegetables, fruits, grains, and meat here were enough for her and her family to eat for a lifetime. Chapter 605. Jiang City was a paradise that Shaoqing had built single-handedly. Although she didn't know why Jiang City wasn't polluted, this was her biggest advantage. Shaoqing couldn't bear to see the people outside in misery and suffering. However, even though she couldn't bear it, she wouldn't sacrifice the entire river town to be the savior of the world just because of her compassion. When a person was powerful and had the ability to be a saint, it was a blessing for many people to be a saint. However, if one didn't have the ability and still insisted on being a saint, then he wouldn't be a saint, but a saint bitch. Shaoqing didn't mind being a saint once in a while, but she didn't want to be a saint bitch, because a saint bitch hurt the people closest to her. After Tang Tianda came back, Shaoqing took him to reinforce the outer circle of the city wall. She planted a lot of lethal mutated plants. The reason why she reinforced it again and again was that she was really worried. Just like this time, if she didn't come back, if the group of high-level zombies didn't retreat, no one knew what would happen. Therefore, she couldn't help but find a variety of mutated plants and plant them all around the outer circle of Jiang City. This was only the first defensive project. In addition, she also set a bunch of other traps. She had to make sure that the defense of Jiang City was at the highest level, so that she could be at ease. When Shaoqing was building Jiang City with people, the spies in the dark also arrived. It wasn't easy for the spies to come here, but they also plucked up a lot of courage to come to Jiang City. After all, Jiang City was a famous city of zombies. They just arrived near Jiang City, and then began to observe the current state of Jiang City. They were lucky. The traps and other things had been preliminarily arranged. Shaoqing and the others weren't outside, or they would definitely notice them. There are only zombies. Someone held a telescope and looked for a long time before complaining. They could only see zombies patrolling back and forth on the city wall. There was really nothing else. There must be a mistake. How can there be a fresh vegetable farm in this state? Look at the number of zombies on the city wall. Living people can't even go in, okay? Not to mention farming inside. There must be a mistake. Someone muttered. What's the rush? Take your time to check it out. Who knows what's going on inside? The leader said coldly. It's not like you don't know what's going on right now. There's a huge reward for finding that base. Everyone is so impetuous. It would be strange if we could find it. The others immediately kept quiet out of fear. The current situation couldn't get any worse. Otherwise, the higher-ups wouldn't have sent them out to investigate as a last resort. Another person immediately complained in a low voice. Where do you think the vegetable base came from? It's as if they're afraid that others will find out. Now that the situation outside is so bad, if there's really a base that knows the secret to not polluting the land, even if they don't announce it, they should use this opportunity to seize power. But I don't see anyone standing out. Who knows? Just work hard. One of them sighed and said, If we can find that vegetable farm, then everything will be fine. If we can't, then we'll be in trouble. They all frowned. If they really couldn't find it, the higher-ups wouldn't be kind to them. They all relied on this to make a living. They might lose their jobs. Hey, look. Suddenly, someone's eyes lit up, and he almost jumped out of his hiding place. The others immediately looked in the direction he pointed. Chapter 606. Originally, Jiang City didn't have a city gate. After Yi moved here, he led his brothers and sisters to renovate the whole city, especially the outer area. They built a wall with stones and built a gate, enclosing the whole city. That was how Jiang City became today. Now the gate was suddenly opened, and a few high-level zombies walked out. The leader was a little girl, but no one could tell whether she was a paranormal or a zombie. This little girl was Gu Panpan. This time, Gu Panpan came out with a group of zombie followers, preparing to go out of the city to hunt. The car they drove out was a large truck, which could carry a lot of things. Although Liangji's farm and vegetable farm had been set up very well, the animals in the farm were still scattered, and there weren't many of them. This time, they went out to catch more mutated animals to fill the farm. Before leaving, Xiaoqing said that as long as the mutated animals could be eaten, no matter what species they were, they should all be brought back to raise them. They weren't afraid of too many mutated animals. After all, they had plenty of places to raise them. If one farm wasn't enough, they could just open another one. Anyway, Jiang City was big, and everywhere was empty. It didn't matter if they opened 10 more farms. They were just afraid that they couldn't catch any mutated animals. That would be a pain in the ass. There are actually people in Jiang City. Some people were so surprised that their glasses fell to the ground. At the beginning, they couldn't tell whether Gu Panpan was a human or a zombie. But when all the zombies got on the car, Gu Panpan stood on the roof of the car and shouted, "Go!" After the apocalypse, zombies were becoming more and more like humans. However, they couldn't speak, let alone speak so fluently. Basically, they could confirm that Gu Panpan was a human. Everyone was stunned. Since the apocalypse, they had never seen a human and zombies living together peacefully. This was no longer something that could be described with the words peaceful coexistence. So everyone couldn't stop exclaiming in amazement. They all wanted to know what kind of ability Gu Panpan had to ensure that the zombies wouldn't attack her, and would even listen to her. This was too inconceivable. The few trucks rumbled away, leaving behind a group of people looking at each other. In the end, they gritted their teeth and waved their hands, all of them following behind. Only 2 people stayed behind to watch and see if anything else would happen. Gu Panpan didn't notice that someone was following them. After all, no one had the guts to follow a group of high-level zombies. Not just one, but a group. Most people would take a detour when they saw them, so as not to lose their lives. However, there were a few people who did the opposite and quietly followed them from behind. After arriving at the place, Gu Panpan was the first to walk down, followed by the high-level zombies. Among the high-level zombies that came out this time, there were a few who had been modified. They were almost the same as ordinary people, with their own thoughts and emotions. Except for being unable to speak, they were almost the same as ordinary people. In addition to these high-level zombies, there were some level 4 or 5 zombies who were specially brought out to do manual labor. These level 4 or 5 zombies were led by the high-level zombies. Almost every high-level zombie was accompanied by 3 to 4 level 4 or 5 zombies. It seemed that they were not to be trifled with. After they were divided into teams, each high-level zombie took his own zombie squad and went out to hunt. There were 5 or 6 hunting teams. Gu Panpan took Xiaoyu, who was looking around curiously, to walk around here and there. Occasionally, they would pick something similar to wild vegetables. At night, they could bring it back to Xiaoqing and let Xiaoqing make a delicious dinner for them. Jiang City could be said to be a paradise for zombies. Many low-level zombies were strengthened after a series of modifications by Yi. Of course, Yi had a sense of propriety. Except for the group of modified people who had been following him before, he did not modify any new zombies. In fact, he did not like to use those zombies for research. After all, if he did that, there would be no difference between him and those people who had been modified before. However, there would be no problem if he modified the group of modified people around him. Besides, Yi did it with everyone's consent. For those modified people, they had been modified into their current appearance and could not be changed back to their original appearance. Therefore, if they could be modified again to improve their strength, they would not refuse. What Yi devoted himself to studying was not the modified people, but how to restore the modified people and end their pain. However, he did not find a solution to this problem. Instead, he succeeded in another direction. The leader of the high-level zombies was above level 5, and some of them were infinitely close to level 6. The subordinates behind them were above level 4, and some of them were at level 5. The strength of such a team was very strong. Ordinary teams of paranormals did not dare to provoke them. Therefore, Gu Panpan was very relieved. Naturally, she did not notice that there was a small tail behind them. This group of small tails was already sweating, because they found that the strength of each zombie was frighteningly high. If they were discovered, they would be gnawed into bones in minutes. Now this group of people looked at Gu Panpan as if they were looking at a demon. If she was not a demon, how could she stay in a group of zombies and not be attacked by zombies? How could she even command these zombies? The leader of the reconnaissance team said, "This batch of vegetables is very likely to come from Jiang City. Jiang City is too scary. This news must be brought back." According to the usual practice, only a small part of the entire base comes out to hunt. If it is really according to the usual practice, then the strength of Jiang City is too scary. Moreover, the people living in Jiang City seem to have a way to command zombies. This is another important news. If their method of commanding zombies is publicized, it will be a great contribution to mankind. From then on, we will no longer have to be afraid of zombies. The more he spoke, the more excited he became, as if he had already seen a beautiful tomorrow for mankind. Probably because he was too excited, he did not control his aura well. Then, he was discovered by the sharp Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu turned his head and looked in their direction with a pair of gloomy eyes. Gu Panpan also noticed that something was wrong. "Who is it? Stop hiding and come out." Chapter 607. After all, they had been investigating for many years and were very experienced. As soon as they heard Gu Panpan's words, their first reaction was to quickly hide. However, they realized that Gu Panpan was looking in their direction. The leader's face stiffened. He quickly waved his hand and signaled for his companions to retreat quietly. He did not expect Gu Panpan to be so sharp. Even though they were so far away, she still noticed them immediately. As he felt bitter in his mouth, he could only pray that one or two of them would be able to escape. As long as someone managed to escape, they would be able to return and report the news to their superiors. Then their mission would not be in vain. However, the few of them crawled and turned around. Just as they were about to run, they saw a little demon lying behind them. This little demon was none other than Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu bared his teeth, revealing the jagged teeth in his mouth. He looked as if he was smiling at them. The few of them shuddered and their legs trembled. The leader immediately shouted, "Run!" They were very experienced and scattered in all directions. Everyone ran in a different direction. This way, there might be a chance for someone to escape. At the very least, the chances of them escaping would be higher. 3 minutes later, Gu Panpan clapped her hands and began to count their heads. 1, 2, 3. The few people who were tied up like fried dough twists fell to the ground. They could not move at all. Their hearts were bitter. There were a total of 5 people, and all of them were lying there. None of them escaped. Gu Panpan bit her fingertips and counted twice. Then, she ordered the zombies under her to drag the 5 people on the ground and began to walk back. She threw the 5 people into the truck. There were already many living animals such as cows, sheep, rabbits, and so on in the truck. When they were thrown in, they immediately startled a group of cows and sheep. The most unlucky young man even had a pig poop on his head. When it was almost noon, Gu Panpan counted their results. They already had a lot of results. Then she called all the zombies back and prepared to go back. The leader of the investigation team was very dedicated. He was tied up so tightly in the truck that he kept wriggling like a worm. He put his head in the gap between the wooden boards of the truck and looked out. As soon as he entered Jiang City, he was stunned. From the outside, it was impossible to see how many zombies there were in Jiang City. Only after entering did he realize that this place was indeed called the City of Zombies. There were zombies everywhere on the street. Although there were a lot of zombies, they didn't look messy at all. These zombies seemed to be in order. The higher the level of the zombie, the more orderly it was. The leader was completely shocked. If the people in Jiang City could command all the zombies in Jiang City, then no survivor base in the entire Celestial Empire could go against Jiang City. Of course, if all the survivor bases were gathered together, it would be easy to destroy Jiang City. After the shock, he saw the vegetable farm, grain farm and farm. His eyes were shining. Apart from the fact that there were a lot of zombies, Jiang City was really suitable to be a farm. The soil here was very fertile, and the land was very big. More importantly, the land here was not polluted. Moreover, the problem of the large number of zombies was no longer a problem, because there were people in Jiang City who could control the zombies. If the boss of Jiang City could cooperate with the boss of Jiang City, then it would be a win-win situation. It would also be a blessing for the whole human race. After arriving at the farm, Gu Panpan asked her subordinates to pull the cows, sheep, pigs, chickens, ducks, rabbits, and so on out of the truck. Then she divided them into separate rooms. Chapter 608. Then there were only 5 people left in the car. They were lying on the ground with disheveled clothes. Their bodies were covered with feces, feathers and other things. They were dirty and smelly, and looked a little pitiful. Gu Panpan disdainfully fanned the air in front of her eyes. She ordered several zombies to drag them into the water to clean them, and then bring them back. The 5 wet people were taken to the place where they lived by Gu Panpan. Xiaoqing was playing with Little Bun. Little Bun was lying on Xiaoqing's belly, rolling and acting like a spoiled child. He looked lively and cute. The 5 people suddenly felt a little relieved. After all, Xiaoqing looked relatively gentle. In comparison, Yin Chiyue, who was sitting beside her, looked more gloomy and cold. What's the matter? Xiaoqing held Little Bun and asked Gu Panpan. Gu Panpan said, "Didn't I take people out to hunt today? These guys have been following me sneakily. I'm 80% sure they don't have good intentions, so I brought them back." Xiaoqing looked at the 5 people up and down. She didn't recognize any of them, so she said, "Where did you come from? What are your intentions for following my Panpan? It doesn't matter if you don't want to say it, or if you can't make it clear. I'm a very democratic person. I definitely won't feed you to the zombies." Xiaoqing said gently. Although her voice and expression were very gentle, the 5 people shivered. The leader gritted his teeth and stammered. This, Xiaoqing answered naturally. "My surname is Xiao. Miss Xiao, the thing is, we are all from the capital. This time we came to Jiang City to discuss something with you. But we couldn't enter Jiang City. It was not easy to see Miss Panpan coming out of Jiang City. But there were many zombies around Miss Panpan. We didn't dare to get close to her, so we could only follow from afar." He was seriously lying through his teeth, but Xiaoqing exposed him mercilessly. "The capital? Which family is it from in the capital? You said you have something to discuss with me, but in fact, you're just here to check on the situation." That person hurriedly said, "We are from the Qin family." Xiaoqing sneered and said, "Drag him away. Chop his body into pieces and feed him to our brothers." The Qin family was her home. How could she send people to investigate? He was simply spouting nonsense. He didn't even look at the place. The leader was sweating profusely and hurriedly said, "I was just joking. Actually, I'm from the Tan family." Tan Xiao had been sitting at the side with Yin Hanqing and Yin Chiyue. The 3 of them were playing Fight the Landlord. When she heard this, she laughed. "Don't forget to slander the Tan family, okay? If my grandfather finds out about this, he'll kill all of you." Old Master Tan was still being resented by Xiaoqing. He had tried everything he could to please Xiaoqing, hoping that she would acknowledge him. In the end, someone was still trying to slander his family. If old Master Tan were to find out about this, he would definitely come out and kill this group of people. The leader took a look. He recognized Tan Xiao. After all, she was a famous playboy in the capital city. He was sweating profusely. His sweat was about the size of soybeans, and it was rolling down his face. Actually, Xiao Qing said lightly. I'll give you one last chance. I'll allow you to organize your words before you speak. If you're lying to me, I won't show you any mercy. He hurriedly said, I'm from the Qian family. After the family that had targeted Xiao Qing was destroyed by Xiao Qing, the Qian family rose up and replaced them as one of the four most powerful families in the capital city. Although they were already one of the four most powerful families in the capital city, their foundation was still weaker than the other families. Therefore, they had always been ranked last among the four most powerful families. This was a very good opportunity. They originally thought that they could outshine others, but they didn't expect that they would be caught before they could investigate the situation clearly. Then what's the purpose of your visit this time? Don't tell me that you really want to investigate Jiangqing City, and then give up? Xiao Qing said lightly. The leader said honestly, actually, it's because of the batch of vegetables that were transported from Jiangqing City to the capital city. All the forces in the capital city want to know who made this batch of vegetables, so they asked us to follow this route. I didn't expect that we really found it. It's Jiangqing City. When Xiao Qing heard it, it was the same as what she had guessed. She knew that this day would come from the very beginning, but she wasn't afraid. In fact, she was very calm. What else did your superiors say? Tell me everything you know, Xiao Qing said lightly. The leader knew that he couldn't deceive Xiao Qing. Instead of angering Xiao Qing, he might as well tell the truth. The superiors didn't give us many instructions. However, I heard 2 points during the meeting. The superiors hope that Jiangqing City can announce the secret of your land not being polluted. If you aren't willing to do so, they will try peaceful means before resorting to force. When he talked about peaceful means before resorting to force, he felt a little bitter. If the entire capital city came, they might be able to make some trouble. Just the Qian family alone wanted to use force against Jiangqing City. Wasn't this just like the old man using the light in the toilet to look for shit? If the entire capital city went up against Jiangqing City, who knew what the outcome would be? Xiao Qing knocked on the armrest of the sofa. Her expression was unclear. It was normal to be discovered, unless the people on the other side were all idiots. As long as they had the intention and looked carefully, they would find out. Even if they were slightly stupid, they would still be able to find Jiangqing City after investigating for a long time. Therefore, she didn't even think about hiding it. Why should she hide it? Sending some vegetables home was a big sin. Moreover, this matter couldn't be hidden. However, this day came faster than she imagined. Xiao Qing thought for a long time and then said, Only the Qian family sent people over? It shouldn't be just the Qian family. However, we didn't go the same way as them, so we don't know who they are. The leader said honestly. He was more tactful and had been cooperating. Therefore, other than being frightened, he wasn't hurt. Xiao Qing said with a pleasant expression, I can let you go, but... They immediately pricked up their ears and listened carefully. They didn't want to miss a single word. Would Xiao Qing be so kind? Why did she feel worried about letting them go? As expected, Xiao Qing smiled and said, Go back and tell your superiors that I'm keeping the others here. Bring the ransom. If they don't pay, I'll kill them. Chapter 609. Xiao Qing looked very elegant as she lazily nestled on the sofa. She raised her eyelids and said, I don't want much ransom, 1 level 5 crystal nucleus per person. Since you are the boss, the price should be more expensive, so I'll add a level 6 one. If you don't have a crystal nucleus, it doesn't matter. You can use food to exchange for food of the same value as the crystal nucleus. If you don't get it within a month, not only will I kill the hostages, I will also list the Qian family as an enemy that I will never interact with. Other forces or families can buy vegetables or food of the same value from me, but not the Qian family. She said lazily, I'll leave it here. Go back and tell your boss clearly, and let him see what's good for him. The leader trembled, and was about to leave when he was stopped by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing planted a daughter on his body before saying to him, "You can get lost now. Panpan, give him a car." The man's face was full of despair, and the last bit of hope in his heart was completely shattered. He knew it. How could a person like Xiaoqing not have a backup plan? After letting the man go, Xiaoqing continued to tease her son. Yin Qiyu frowned and said, "Qing, I'm worried that the Qian family may do something to us. Although we are not afraid of them, if they use this as an excuse to unite with others to do something to us, we have no other choice. Although 1 or 2 bases will not cause any harm to us, what if they unite to destroy most of the bases? The things in our hands are too enviable. The land will not be polluted, and the method to command zombies. With these as a bargaining chip, I'm afraid many people will be incited by them. You know, people are greedy," Yin Qiyu said in a deep voice. Xiaoqing nodded. "I know. But if we don't do this, will they not do something to us? Just like what you said, people's greed can't be stopped. Instead of waiting for them to make a move on us, why don't we take the initiative, and take the initiative in our own hands? Only when we hurt them and scare them will they know who they can't afford to provoke." Xiaoqing looked out of the window and said, "Make use of these few days to study the difference between Jiang City's land and the land outside. Also find out the source of the water. This way, we can take the initiative after the war. It's useless to only hurt them. Once the whole country is in extreme shortage of food, and it's a matter of life and death, everyone will risk their lives to deal with us. That will be the real crisis. Even if we tell the public that we don't know why Jiang City's land is not polluted, no one will believe us. Sometimes, an advantage would become a disadvantage, and good things would become fatal. Things in this world were so fickle." Yin Qiyu agreed. In terms of strength, although he was strong, he could only be considered below average among this group of people. What he was best at was research, and this was the only thing he could help Xiaoqing with. Yin Hanqing had made up his mind. After dinner, he would go and find Yin Yi. Previously, Xiaoqing had asked Yin Hanqing to bring back the soil and water samples from outside. As long as they were willing, they could immediately start the research. Next, Xiaoqing began to assign tasks. They would soon experience a bloody battle. This battle would definitely be the most difficult one in her life. It could be said that they would be besieged on all sides. Everyone would become their enemy. That night, sharp and loud noises came from Jiang City. If there were any humans nearby, they would definitely be scared out of their wits, because every sound represented a high-level zombie. Chapter 610. This meant that the zombies were above level 6. When zombies reached a certain level, they would be able to order lower-level zombies around. Jiang City lacked everything except for 2 things: high-level zombies and food. The group of modified humans under Yinye's command were all at level 6. There were also some local zombies in Jiang City. These zombies all had their own thoughts. After being modified by Yin Yi, they became his loyal followers. There were more than 30 zombies above level 6 in Jiang City. Xiaoqing was not included. Xiaoqing was already at level 7. Although she was not a pure zombie and could not order zombies around, she had the natural aura of a king. When ordinary zombies saw her, they would tuck their tails between their legs. Those zombies who had their own thoughts had sincerely regarded Xiaoqing as their boss. This was also why Xiaoqing was said to be the real boss of Jiang City. The sound waves of zombies could travel very far. Many bases were woken up in the middle of the night and found that there was a zombie tide outside. Countless zombies were densely packed and passing by their bases. Some bases were scared out of their wits because these zombies were going to attack their bases. In the middle of the night, they all got up and armed themselves to prepare for the last resistance. In the end, they did not expect that the zombies would just pass by their bases. They did not even look at their bases. If someone looked down from the sky, they would find that there was a zombie tide in several provinces with Jiang City as the center. A large number of zombies started to move towards Jiang City. It was as if they were going to worship their king. Xiaoqing waved her hand and said, "Go out and work. Start expanding the outer city." Although Jiang City was huge, When the zombies rushed over from all directions, it really could not accommodate them. They had to expand the outer city. Inyi had tried to expand it a long time ago. His idea was to enclose a piece of land outside the city wall. It was like Jiang City was a circle with a big circle outside. Then on the outermost layer of the city wall, there would be defensive equipment. However, due to many reasons, this idea was eventually shelved and then picked up by Xiaoqing. The busiest ones were Tang Tianda and the zombies. Every day, the zombies would go out and pick up a lot of big stones. These big stones would be polished into a square shape and then become the main body of the city wall. Xiaoqing borrowed more than a dozen Earth paranormals from Hope Survivor Base. They were responsible for the construction of the city wall. The construction speed was very fast. After all, they had a lot of manpower. When the first wave of zombies arrived, the basic structure of the outer wall had already been built. Tang Tianda was busy planting another layer of mutant plants outside. The zombies that arrived obediently joined the construction team, so their progress was a little faster. Xiaoqing looked at the time. There was still time. The group of human leaders had always been slow, so they must have a meeting first to discuss how to attack Jiang City together. After the discussion, they began to discuss who would be the leader of such a large group. For this group of humans, they would discuss who would be the leader even in times of crisis, let alone now. It was just like in ancient times. People would fight to the death for the position of the leader of the martial arts circle. After all that, they still had to discuss how many people each base would send, how many benefits they would get after the war, and so on. At least a week had passed by the time they finished discussing everything. Therefore, Xiaoqing was not in a hurry at all. After the outer wall was built, she was very calm. Next, she began to carefully repair it. Chapter 6:11. They had to make sure that the outer defense of Jiang City was impregnable. After all, the outcome of the upcoming battle was very important. When the construction of the outer city wall was almost done, Qin Zishi brought a group of people over. They were originally here to transport this batch of vegetables, but they found that Jiang City was in full swing, so they asked one more question. Xiaoqing told Qin Zishi about what had happened recently, and then said to him, "Go back now and tell Godfather not to stand up for me. Just keep quiet and leave the rest to me." Qin Zishi's face changed immediately. He told the people around him to go back first and tell Grandpa Qin the news. Then he said, "I'll stay." "You go back too." Xiaoqing frowned and said, "It doesn't matter whether you're there or not. Why are you getting involved? Go back and take good care of old master. That's the greatest help you can give me." Qin Zishi said calmly, "Sister Qing, listen to me slowly. I'm now a 5th level paranormal. After I broke through the 5th level, I gained another ability, which is the ability to control beasts. Although I can't tame so many mutant beasts with my current strength, I can temporarily control the beasts that you've tamed. I think this ability will be of great help in the upcoming battle. Let me stay, Sister Qing. You're in danger, but you let me go back to the happy nest in the capital. Not to mention whether Grandpa will be angry or not. Even I will feel uneasy. Besides, I believe that as long as you're here, I won't be hurt." Xiaoqing turned her head away. After a long time she said, "Okay, I'll let you stay, but you have to listen to me. If you dare to take risks without my permission, you'll go back to the capital immediately." "Okay." Qin Zishi agreed at once. His ability was indeed very useful for the current Jiang City. So that afternoon, Xiaoqing sent a group of zombies to Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan to capture high-level mutant beasts. In the northwest direction of Jiang City, there was a large forest. There were many mutated beasts in it. These mutated beasts had been living a good life in the forest, but in the end, they were all captured. On the other hand, in the capital, the Qian family received the news. Just as Xiaoqing had expected, they immediately contacted the people in charge of many large and small bases, as well as a few big forces in the capital. They were prepared to annihilate Jiangcheng, because the news brought back by the leader of the exploration team was too shocking. If what the leader of the exploration team said was true, then not only did Jiang City have a way to prevent the land and water from being polluted, They also had a way to control zombies. If they could obtain these two methods, could the apocalypse still be called the apocalypse? No, it would be a paradise for humans. Humans would no longer have natural enemies, and the zombies would become one of the resources controlled by humans. The water and land would no longer be polluted, and humans would no longer lack food. The head of the Qian family even had a very beautiful idea. Humans might be able to rebuild the country and restore the previous technology, or even higher. Moreover, with these two methods, the Celestial Empire might even become the largest country in the world. It would also be the country with the highest status. He was the first person to discover these two methods, and the power of the Qian family would also rise to another level. Unfortunately, according to the description of the leader of the exploration team, he found that the Qian family's power was not enough to annihilate the entire Jiang city. Otherwise, he would really want to take all the benefits for himself. He was really unwilling to share such a big piece of cake with others. But no matter how unwilling he was, he had to share it. If he didn't, he would choke to death. Chapter 6:12. Many people came to the meeting, including most of the base chiefs of the Chinese Empire, including Yin Qiu as old boss, the base chief of S City, Meng Shen, and the others. Of course, there were also the heads of the Qin family and the Tan family. The head of the Qian family first described his idea, and then began. I hope that everyone can contribute to this cause. Jiang City, as the largest city of zombies in the country, should have been wiped out long ago. Now that it is related to the future of mankind, it is even more necessary to do so. The rest of the base chiefs chimed in one after another. Old Master Qin was furious. He slammed the table and stood up. I'll say it right here. I won't participate in this matter. Why won't I participate? I'm not afraid to tell you that my daughter is in Jiangcheng. Whoever dares to touch my daughter will be standing on the opposite side of the Qin family. The head of the Qian family had long disliked Old Master Qin. After all, although the Qian family was one of the 4 major families in the capital, it was ranked at the bottom. Who didn't have ambition? Who didn't want to rise in status? He said coldly, Old Master Qin, do you mean that your daughter is in cahoots with the zombies? Everyone knows that zombies are standing on the opposite side of mankind. Is the Qin family planning to go against mankind? At this point, Old Master Tan also stood up. I'm also against this matter. Whoever dares to touch Jiangcheng is equivalent to touching the Tan family. The people who knew these 2 old men were in an uproar. Who didn't know that these 2 old men had been right their whole lives? Old Master Tan would definitely oppose anything that Old Master Qin supported, and vice versa. After so many years, this was the first time they had seen these 2 old men express their support for the same matter. Moreover, he was so resolute that it was shocking to the point of no hesitation. Zhu Machan also stood up silently. Xiaoqing is my friend. I won't do anything to a friend. The head of the Qian family immediately said, You don't hesitate to stand on the opposite side of mankind for your own selfish interests? Don't tell me that you're not preparing to attack Jiangcheng for your own selfish interests. Old Master Qin said coldly. The Qian family head said righteously, I'm doing this for the sake of the entire human race. Bah! Old Master Tan spat a mouthful of thick phlegm in front of Master Qian and said, What are you thinking? Everyone knows that. Why are you trying to make a fool of yourself here? I know what will happen today. Old Qin and I just expressed our opinions. We can't interfere with your opinions. But starting today, the Qin family and the Tan family will withdraw from the Kyoto survivor base. Zhu Machan also firmly said, There's also my mercenaries. Old Master Qin nodded. That's right. Starting today, our 3 families will leave the capital. If you want to send troops, send troops. If you want to join forces, then join forces. It's none of our business. As soon as they said that, many people's faces changed. It was not because of anything else, but because the 3 families together accounted for almost half of the strength of the capital. If they left, the capital's name as the first survivor base of the Celestial Empire would not live up to its name. However, many people knew that these people were stubborn. Once they made a decision, they would not change it. In other words, the Qin family, the Tan family and Zhu Machen's departure from the capital was already set in stone. Old Master Lu, the last of the 4 great families in the capital and a famous peacemaker, hurriedly said, "What's the point of this? You two are already so old. Why are you still throwing tantrums? Aren't we just discussing this slowly?" Old Master Qin said coldly, "I've lived for more than half my life, and I only have one daughter. You know my temper. I'm always on the side of those close to me, not the side of reason. Besides, reason is not on your side. You want to make a move on my daughter. Do you expect me to be a coward and endure it?" Old Master Tan also said, "I've been at odds with Old Master Qin all my life. In the end, I have to say that I admire him. Even if the Qin family and the Tan family get involved, we won't regret it. The one in Jiangqing is our daughter. Our only daughter." Chapter 613. The 2 old men had been tough all their lives, but they had done it for the sake of the country and the people. Now they were finally tough for their daughter. Whether it was out of selfishness or guilt, they had made such a decision in the end. There's no need for anyone to try and persuade the 2 of us. Things have already been decided. We're already so old, and we don't want to argue with you. Let's see who will win on the battlefield. Old Master Qin brought Old Master Tan and Zhu Machen away forcefully. There were also people who tried to stop them, especially the head of the Lu family. He might seem like a peacemaker, but he had been a peacemaker for so many years. Moreover, he had been a peacemaker for the Qin and Tan families. How could he not be capable? He could see the situation clearly. Currently, the whole capital was supported by the Qin and Tan families. If these 2 families left, it could be said that half of the capital had collapsed. However, the head of the Lu family knew very well that he couldn't stop them. These 2 old men were stubborn like bulls. Once they made a decision, they would never change it even if they had to knock their heads against a wall and break their heads. That afternoon, the forces of the Qin and Tan families, as well as Zhu Machen, slowly withdrew from the capital and began to move in the direction of Jiang City. It was really shocking. The 2 families should have more than 10,000 people in total. Under the protection of Zhu Machen's mercenary group, they slowly trekked toward Jiang City. When Xiaoqing received the news, the 3 forces were already very close to Jiang City. Xiaoqing immediately dropped all the work in her hands and went directly to take over. She looked at the army that stretched for hundreds of miles. She really didn't know what to say, especially Old Master Qin. It could even be said that they weren't related by blood. But as soon as this happened, Old Master Qin immediately gave up his foundation without saying anything. He brought his huge family to support her. What did she do to deserve the honor of being Old Master Qin's daughter in this lifetime? Xiaoqing sometimes felt lucky that she was a zombie and didn't have tears, so she wouldn't cry in public and collapse. She looked at Old Master Qin's face, which had become a lot older. She also knew how torturous it was for him to make such a decision. 100 years of foundation. How much pressure must he have endured to run such a large family? As for Elder Tan, he actually didn't know Xiaoqing anything. Yet, he made such a decision at a time like this. Finally, there was Zhu Machen, her friend. She really didn't make this friend for nothing. At this moment, Xiaoqing truly accepted Zhu Machen as one of her own. Xiaoqing jumped out of the car and kowtowed to the 2 old men 3 times without saying anything. It was said that men had gold under their knees. Wasn't it the same for women? She had never knelt before anyone in her entire life. This was the first time. "Father, Godfather, your daughter is unfilial and has made you worry." After hearing what Xiaoqing said, Elder Tan's eyes turned red. Like a child, he sat on the floor and cried in front of tens of thousands of people. "Alan, look. Our daughter has acknowledged me. I've let you down. I've let my daughter down. Alan." Old Master Qin's eyes were red as he forcefully pulled him up. "How old are you? Why are you crying? Isn't this shaming our daughter? Get the hell up." As the 2 old men talked, they were about to cry. Yin Qiyue, who had followed them, quickly said, "Don't stand outside. Let's go home and talk." Chapter 6:14. Xiaoqing pulled the two old men into the car first. The two old men had told their families and subordinates in advance that they were going to Jiang City, the city of zombies. What showed the cohesion of the two old men was that, except for a few people, the others were willing to move with them, even if they were going to the city of zombies. Therefore, when they saw the zombies behind Xiaoqing, they were very calm. At least they looked calm. Even when they were on the way back, something happened. A beautiful woman, who looked at most 40 years old, suddenly hugged a zombie and didn't want to let go. She hugged the zombie tightly and cried. The zombie in her arms looked young. It was stooped, and its sharp nails kept extending and retracting. It looked very irritated. It roared angrily, but didn't hurt the woman. Xiaoqing heard the noise, so he came down to see. He found the woman hugging the zombie and crying, so he asked, "What happened?" The woman cried intermittently, "This is my son. This is my son. My son." The zombie in her arms was only at level 5. Although it had a certain level of intelligence, it was only slightly better than a 3 or 5-year-old child. It was only able to control itself and not hurt the woman because of Xiaoqing's orders. The woman told her story intermittently. She and her husband loved each other very much. She married her husband when she was 19 years old. At that time, her husband was still a poor boy. They worked hard for many years and gradually became rich. Later, they gave birth to their son Xiaoyuan. When Xiaoyuan was 15 years old, the apocalypse came. Their family was relatively lucky, because none of the three of them became zombies. But at the same time, they were also unlucky, because they didn't have any superpowered people in their family. They were trapped in their own house, so they didn't have much food and vegetables at home. Their son had a hobby of eating snacks, so there were a lot of snacks stored at home. That was why they could survive for a long time. However, the food would run out sooner or later. Soon they would run out of food at home. There were only a few pieces of chocolate left. The two of them were reluctant to eat them, and left them for their son. But even so, how many days could they last? In the end, the man chose to go out to look for food. The first time he found some food and came back safely. A few days later, he went out a second time and a third time. Finally one day he left and never came back. The woman cried secretly. But life still had to go on because they still had a son. At that time, her son told her that his father was gone, and he was the only man in the house. He would go out to find food. But how could a woman let her son take risks? Therefore, the woman went out and found a lot of food. When she returned happily, the door was broken and her son was gone. The woman had despaired, cried, and even thought of death. But in the end she persevered. She searched everywhere for her son, from the southernmost place to the northernmost place, and from the northernmost place to the southernmost place. In the end, she stayed in the capital with the most traffic. She believed that sooner or later, she would find her son. And that day really came. Once the woman started crying, she couldn't stop. She wanted to vent all the depression and despair in her heart. God knew that during these days, she couldn't sleep every night. She tossed and turned in bed, and her mind was filled with the face of her young son. There were indeed miracles in this world. Chapter 6:15. So what if her son turned into a zombie? She wasn't afraid. That was her son, a piece of flesh that fell from her stomach. She watched him grow up with her own eyes. Xiaoqing's mood today was particularly emotional. She said to the woman, "The evolution of zombies is actually still the evolution of humans. That means that sooner or later, your son will recover his memories. As long as you have the patience to wait, and your feelings can be cultivated, you can spend more time with your son. Even if he can't remember, he will be much closer to you. When we return to Jiang City, I can arrange for you to live with your son. But your son is surrounded by zombies. Are you afraid?" The woman said firmly, "No." She was afraid of everything. But the thing she was most afraid of was losing her son. As long as her son was by her side, she would have unlimited courage to deal with anything. Xiaoqing nodded and didn't say anything else. She was just a little envious. Unfortunately, her mother was already in heaven. Even if she was envious, it was useless. It would be very troublesome if so many people came at once. Xiaoqing had to temporarily isolate two areas in Jiang City. One area was for zombies, and the other was for humans. This was only a temporary arrangement. After everything was settled, she would think of other ways. Jiang City would become the most special city. In this city, humans and zombies would live together in harmony. This was the future of Jiang City. It would be very troublesome if a large number of people moved in. But at the same time, it also meant that Jiang City's strength would rise. The Qin family, the Tan family, and Zhu Machan were the backbone of the capital at that time. Xiaoqing didn't mind if this kind of good thing happened a few more times. After everything was settled, Xiaoqing expanded the place where they originally lived. She expanded the two-story bungalow into a large courtyard. Her family members would all live here. The two old men lived opposite each other, so they could still bicker. Jiang City entered a new round of bustling. On the other side, there were still endless disputes. Due to the withdrawal of the Qin family and the Tan family, the alliance gathered by the Qian family was powerless. The matter of gathering to attack Rivertown was delayed for a few more days. These few days were just enough for Jiangqing to take a breather. The two old men handed over all the military power to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing started to organize the troops. Excluding the old, weak, women and children, the remaining combat power was close to 6,000 people. 6,000 people, the fighting strength of a plate of loose sand, might not even be as strong as a mercenary group. Therefore, before the battle began, she had to integrate these few teams into one and form a certain fighting force. Otherwise, they would only become cannon fodder on the battlefield. Fortunately, because of the previous woman, these people's ability to accept zombies was much higher. Who hadn't had a family member turn into a zombie? Perhaps their relatives were among the zombies in Jiang City. Humans were emotional creatures, especially under the influence of the environment. Many people even took the initiative to search in Jiang City to see if their lost relatives had turned into zombies. However, this behavior was quickly stopped. Xiaoqing was afraid that they would get hurt. Although the zombies were controlled by them, if someone did something irrational, the zombies wouldn't just stand still. Even a rabbit would bite when it was anxious, let alone a crazy zombie. Xiaoqing used the radio to broadcast several times a day. She hoped that everyone wouldn't step out of the place where humans lived and enter the area where zombies were active. Otherwise, if they got hurt, she wouldn't be responsible. Chapter 6:16. In fact, most of the zombies didn't have time to be provoked. Most of the zombies were building the city wall, while the rest were cleaning the houses. There were many empty houses in Jiang City, but they were all covered with dust and were in a mess. It was impossible to move in at the moment. Everyone who entered Jiang City was assigned to their own house, but they had to clean it up themselves. The human activity area was divided into three major areas. The area where the paranormals with combat power lived was like a military camp. It was not only the place where they trained, but also the place where they slept and ate. Of course, these paranormals also had their own homes. When they didn't have any training or tasks, they could go back to their own homes. Those who were alone and had no relatives or friends were assigned to one area. The houses in this area were generally small, suitable for single people to live in without wasting space. Those who had relatives or family members were assigned to another area. The houses in this area were generally larger, suitable for one family to live in. In addition to these three areas, there was another special area, which was similar to a combination of a nursing home and an orphanage. The Qin and Tan families had brought many lonely old people and children with no family members. In the past, when they were in the capital, the Qin and Tan families would give them a certain amount of food every week and a temporary place to live. After arriving in Jiang City, Xiaoqing was very generous and directly set up a nursing home for the elderly and children who had no family members. Ordinary people who didn't have any fighting ability could come to apply for jobs. They had to take care of these people and get their own wages. Generally, the people who came to apply for jobs in the nursing home were mothers who had lost their children or young women. They were ordinary people who didn't have any fighting ability and didn't have good physical strength. They were most suitable for taking care of people. The rest of the men were assigned to work in the plantation and farm. When there were more people, there had to be rules. The rule in Jiang City was to exchange labor for food and crystal nuclei. Anyway, Jiang City lacked everything except food. She could afford to feed 10,000 people. However, he could raise any kind of person, but he couldn't raise idlers. Idlers would only cause problems. When people were idle, they would easily cause trouble. Moreover, they would develop a character of idleness and hate work. Therefore, Shaoqing arranged jobs for everyone, so that they could earn money from work to support themselves. Only the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled, and those who could not even support themselves were qualified to enter the nursing home. All the paranormals were also divided into two groups. Those with high combat power were responsible for hunting, fighting, patrolling, and a series of other tasks. Paranormals with lower combat power, or no combat power, were in charge of logistics. For example, some water ability users were responsible for producing drinking water or watering the land. Wind ability users were responsible for generating electricity, while earth ability users were responsible for farming or construction. Within a few days, Shaoqing had managed the entire river town in an orderly manner. She seemed to be a natural leader and was very suitable for this kind of work. Also, the backbone of the Qin family and the Tan family formed the upper echelons of Rivertown. Shaoqing looked at the scene in front of him. He was confident that he could turn Jiang City into a paradise during the apocalypse. As long as one wasn't blind, one would be able to see that Jiang City was better than the capital. Whether it was ordinary people or paranormals, they could all live a good life here. A life that could let people see hope was the best. Whether it was ordinary people or paranormals, all of them were very motivated because they were building their future home. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.